The Montana Territory didn't forgive mistakes. Eliza Harrow learned that the morning they buried Thomas, when the preacher's words got swallowed by wind and the handful of neighbors who showed up wouldn't meet her eyes. 6 months later, she was still learning it. Every day taught the same brutal lesson in 100 different ways. The fence posts were rotting, the well pump seized up twice a week. The roof leaked in 4 places she'd counted, probably more she hadn't found yet. The cattle, what was left of them, had started breaking through the eastern pasture fence, wandering onto land she didn't own, land that belonged to men who smiled with too many teeth when they talked about buying her out. "Mrs. Harrow, you're being unreasonable." That was Carter Drummond, 3 days ago, sitting in her kitchen like he owned it already. Fat fingers drumming on her table, smile that didn't reach his eyes. "The offer's fair," he'd said. More than fair considering the state of things. She'd shown him the door without a word. He'd left still smiling, tipping his hat like a gentleman. The threat was in his silence, in the way his men waited on horses outside, and how he took his time putting on his gloves. Now it was October, and the first real cold had arrived like a fist to the gut. Eliza stood in the barn. Calling it a barn was generous. It was barely standing, staring at the 3 cows she had left. They stared back with dull eyes, ribs showing through mangy coats. "I know," she said. "I know." One of them lowed, a sound like accusation. She was 28 years old. She felt 60. Her hands were cracked and bleeding in places where the work had worn through calluses she didn't know she could grow. Her hair, which Thomas used to say looked like honey in lamplight, hung in a permanent braid she redid once a week, whether it needed it or not. She wore his old coat because hers had worn through at the elbows. She wore his boots because hers had fallen apart. The ranch Thomas had died building was eating her alive. She was pouring the last of the grain, not enough, never enough, when she heard the wagon. Her rifle was leaning against the stall. She had it in her hands before she reached the barn door, thumbing back the hammer as she stepped into the gray morning light. The wagon was a wreck on wheels, pulled by a horse that looked like it was holding on out of spite more than strength. 2 figures sat on the bench, a man and a girl. Eliza didn't lower the rifle. The wagon stopped 30 feet out. The man raised his hands slowly, empty palms forward. He was tall. She could see that even sitting down. Dark hair under a hat that had seen better years. Coat that might have been nice once, before the trail wore it down to threads and determination. "Ma'am," he called out. His voice was rough, like gravel in a tin cup. "We're not here for trouble." "Then you took a wrong turn," Eliza said. "Keep moving." The girl, couldn't be more than 7 or 8, peeked around the man's shoulder, big eyes and a thin face. She wore a coat too big for her, sleeves hanging past her hands. "Please." The man kept his hands up. "Just looking for work. Any work. We can move on come morning if you're not satisfied." "I don't have work. You've got fences falling down, saw them on the way in. Roof's got holes, barn's leaning like it's drunk. I've got no money to pay you." "Room and board, that's all I'm asking. For me and my daughter." Eliza's jaw tightened. She studied them. The horse's ribs showed through its coat. The wagon had a canvas cover over the back, but she could see through gaps where the fabric had torn. Not much under there. Maybe nothing. "Where are you coming from?" "East. Been traveling since summer." "Where you headed?" The man was quiet for a moment, then, "Wherever we land, I suppose." "You suppose?" "Yes, ma'am." "You run from something?" His eyes, she could see them now, even at this distance, didn't waver. "We're running toward something better. That a crime?" "Depends on what you left behind." "Nothing worth discussing. I promise you that." The girl shivered. Eliza saw it. The kid was freezing in that oversized coat, and the morning wasn't even properly cold yet. Give it 2 weeks, they'd both be ice. "I don't need help," Eliza said. "Respectfully, ma'am, your fences say different." "My fences are my business." "Fair enough." The man lowered his hand slowly, reached for the reins. "Come on, Lena. We'll try the next place." "There is no next place," Eliza said. "Not for 20 miles, and the man who owns it will shoot you for stepping on his land." The man, Caleb, she'd learned his name was Caleb Rourke, though not for a few hours yet, looked at her. Really looked. Not the way men usually did, cataloging her failures and finding them amusing. He looked tired. Honest tired. the kind that came from miles and hunger and sleeping rough. Then I guess we'll sleep rough one more night, he said. He clicked his tongue. The horse started forward. Eliza watched them start to turn around. The girl, Lena, looked back once. Those big eyes. Christ, those eyes. Stop, Eliza heard herself say. The wagon halted. 2 weeks, she said. You fix the fences, patch the roof, get the barn upright. You sleep in the barn. You eat what I eat, which isn't much. After 2 weeks, you move on. Deal? Caleb studied her face. Then he nodded once. Deal. And I'm keeping the rifle close. Wouldn't expect different. That was how it started. A moment of weakness she'd regret or remember for the rest of her life, depending on how the next 2 weeks went. Caleb was good with his hands. That became obvious on the first day, watching him work the fence line. He didn't waste motion, didn't waste words. Just pulled out tools from that wagon, hammer, nails, wire cutters, things that looked worn but functional, and got to work. Lena followed him like a shadow. Quiet girl, too quiet maybe. She'd nod when Eliza spoke to her, but rarely answered out loud. She wore that oversized coat everywhere, even inside the house when Eliza grudgingly let them come in for the midday meal. She don't talk much, Caleb had said that first evening, like an apology. Neither do I, Eliza replied. Noticed. They ate in silence. Bread and beans. The bread was hard. The beans were harder. Nobody complained. After, Caleb washed his plate and Lena's without being asked, then headed back to the barn. Through the window, Eliza watched him climb up to the loft, where he'd spread out their bedrolls. He moved like a man trying not to disturb ghosts. The second day, he fixed the well pump. How'd you know how to do that? Eliza asked, watching water flow clear and steady for the first time in weeks. Used to work odd jobs. You pick things up. What kind of odd jobs? The kind that needed doing. She didn't push, partly because she didn't care, partly because she recognized a wall when she saw one. She'd built enough of her own. By the third day, Lena had started leaving her coat on a nail by the door when she came inside. Progress, Eliza supposed. The girl helped with small things, gathering eggs from the 3 chickens that hadn't been stolen or killed by coyotes, sweeping the porch, folding blankets. She still didn't talk much, but sometimes Eliza caught her humming, soft, almost inaudible, some tune Eliza didn't recognize. The 4th day brought rain, cold rain, the kind that promised snow wasn't far behind. Caleb worked through it anyway, up on the roof with tar and shingles he'd somehow scrounged from God knew where, probably pulled them off the wagon, sacrificing their own shelter to fix hers. You're going to fall and break your neck, Eliza called up. Wouldn't be the worst thing that's happened to me, he called back. I'm not dragging your body off my property. Fair. But he kept working, and he didn't fall, and by evening 3 of the 4 leaks had stopped. That night, Eliza made stew. Actual stew, with a rabbit she'd shot that morning, and the last of the potatoes from the cellar. It wasn't much, but it was better than beans. They ate at the table. Rain hammered the roof, the parts that didn't leak anymore anyway. This is good, Lena said. First words Eliza had heard from her in 4 days. Thank you, Eliza said, surprising herself with how much the small comment mattered. Caleb looked at his daughter, something passing between them, some private language of glances and small nods. We appreciate the hospitality, Mrs. Harrow, he said. It's just Eliza, and it's not hospitality, it's a business arrangement. Yes, ma'am. Stop calling me ma'am. Makes me feel old. You're not old, Lena said very seriously. Eliza almost smiled. Eat your stew, kid. On the 6th day, the neighbors arrived. 2 of them. Brothers named Pike and Samuel Garrett, who ran a spread 10 miles south. They rode up mid-morning, faces set in identical expressions of suspicion. Eliza, Pike said, touching his hat. He was the older one, early 40s, with a beard that looked like it housed small animals. Saw smoke from your chimney's been regular. Thought we'd check in. Translation, thought we'd see what stranger you've taken in. Appreciated, Eliza said. She stood on the porch, rifle within easy reach, but not in her hands. Everything's fine. Samuel, younger, meaner, with eyes like a snake watching a mouse, looked past her toward the barn where Caleb was working. That him? That's my hired hand, yes. Hired? Samuel made it sound dirty. Heard you didn't have 2 coins to rub together. Heard wrong, I guess. Pike shifted in his saddle. Look, Eliza, we're just concerned. You out here alone, now some drifter shows up. I'm not alone, and he's working for his keep, same as anyone. Where's he from? Samuel asked. Does it matter? Might. There's been talk of rustlers working the northern territories, men riding through, taking what isn't theirs. Caleb had stopped working. He stood by the barn, hammer in hand, watching. Not moving, just watching. He hasn't stolen anything, Eliza said. Yet, Samuel said. Sam. Pike's voice carried a warning. Then to Eliza. We're just looking out for our own. Your husband would have wanted... My husband's dead. The words came out harder than she meant them. And what I do on my land is my business. The brothers exchanged a look. Samuel's jaw worked like he was chewing something bitter. Winter's coming, Pike said finally. You need help, real help. You know where to find us. I'll keep that in mind. They left, but slowly. Making a show of it. Samuel looked back twice, eyes on Caleb. When they were gone, Eliza walked to the barn. Friends of yours? Caleb asked. Neighbors, not friends. They seem concerned. They're nosy. Different thing. Caleb set down the hammer. I can move on if I'm causing trouble. You're not causing trouble. Eliza crossed her arms. But since we're talking about it, where are you from? I told you, east. That's a direction, not an answer. He looked at her, really looked, the way he had that first day from the wagon, measuring something. I was a marshal, he said finally. Territorial marshal, up in Wyoming. That was before. Before what? Before I wasn't anymore. What happened? His eyes went somewhere else. Somewhere dark. I made a call. Wrong call, turns out. People died who shouldn't have. So I stopped being a marshal and started being a man who does odd jobs and keeps moving. And Lena? She's mine. Only thing in this world that is, and I aim to keep it that way. Eliza studied his face, saw the truth there, whatever shape it took. The Garretts are right about one thing. Winter's coming hard. I can't pay you. This ranch is barely holding on, and when it goes under, which it probably will, you'll be out in the cold with nothing to show for it. So why'd you let us stay? Good question. One she'd been asking herself for 6 days. I don't know, she said honestly. Maybe I'm tired of doing everything alone. Maybe I'm stupid. Maybe both. You're not stupid. You don't know me well enough to say that. I know you're standing on a sinking ship and still trying to bail water. That's not stupid. Stubborn, maybe, but not stupid. She almost smiled. Get back to work, Marshal. Former Marshal. Right. Former. But something had shifted. Some small understanding that wasn't quite trust, but was in the same neighborhood. The first snow came on the 9th day. Not much. Just enough to dust the world white and remind them what was coming. Lena caught snowflakes on her tongue in the yard, spinning in circles, actually laughing. First time she's done that since her mother died, Caleb said quietly. He was standing beside Eliza on the porch, both of them watching the girl. I'm sorry, Eliza said. 2 years ago. Fever took her. Took half the town, actually, but that didn't make it easier. Is that when you stopped being a marshal? After. That came later. He paused. My wife, Anna, she was the one who saw good in people. I was the one who saw threats, made me decent at my job, terrible at everything else. After she died, I tried to keep going. Tried to be both of us for Lena. But I couldn't. So when I made that bad call, when everything went to hell, part of me was almost relieved. Gave me a reason to walk away from the whole mess. What was the bad call? He didn't answer for a long time. Then, I trusted someone I shouldn't have. They sold out a witness I was protecting. Family got killed. Federal men asked questions I didn't have good answers for, so I turned in my badge and left. They let you just leave? Didn't give them much choice. Was gone before they could decide otherwise. Snow kept falling. Lena kept spinning. She deserves better than a drifter father and a barn to sleep in, Caleb said. She's got a father who's trying. That's more than some kids get. He looked at her then. You'd have made a good mother. The words hit harder than they should have. Eliza's throat tightened. Thomas and I tried. It didn't happen. I'm sorry. Don't be. World's hard enough without bringing kids into it. And yet here's Lena, spinning in the snow like nothing else matters. Kids are stupid that way. But she said it soft, almost fond, watching the girl laugh at Sky. Gish. On the 11th day, Drummond came back. 3 riders this time, Drummond in the middle, 2 ranch hands flanking him like bookends. They arrived mid-afternoon when Caleb was out checking the fence line and Lena was inside with Eliza, learning how to patch socks. Eliza heard them before she saw them. She was up and moving before Drummond called out, "Mrs. Harrow, moment of your time." She stepped onto the porch, rifle not in her hands, but close. Always close now. "Mr. Drummond," he smiled that oil-slick smile. "Cold day. Winter's announcing itself, wouldn't you say? What do you want?" "Direct." "I appreciate that about you." He gestured to the ranch. "I see you've made some improvements." "New hand?" "Temporary." Well, that's actually fortuitous. I've been meaning to speak with you again about my previous offer." Answer's still no. "You haven't heard my new terms." "Don't need to." Drummond's smile thinned, just a hair. "Mrs. Harrow, I'm trying to help you. This land, in your current state, is a liability. You can't work it properly, can't maintain it. Come spring, you'll have lost half your remaining cattle, and the bank will foreclose. I'm offering you a way out with dignity." "I'll keep my dignity and my land, thanks." "Will you?" One of the ranch hands, a thick-necked man with a scar through his eyebrow, shifted in his saddle. "That's a bold claim from a woman who's barely scraping by." Eliza's hand drifted toward the rifle. "Easy," Drummond said, though he was looking at his man, not her. "We're all civilized here. I'm simply trying to help a neighbor in need." "I'm not your neighbor, and I don't need help." "Everyone needs help, Mrs. Harrow. The question is whether you're wise enough to accept it when it's offered. The question is whether you're smart enough to leave before I get unneighborly." The scar-faced man's hand dropped to his gun. Everything stopped. Drummond held up a hand. Now, no need for that." His eyes, cold and calculating, found Eliza's. "Think about it. My offer stands until the end of the month. After that, well, winter makes things complicated. Accidents happen. Would be a shame if something unfortunate occurred." "You threatening me?" "Stating facts. Montana winter's brutal. Animals die. Buildings burn. People freeze. Just the way of things out here." He tipped his hat, turned his horse. "End of the month, Mrs. Harrow. Be smart." They rode off slow, making sure she watched them go. Eliza's hands were shaking. She gripped the rifle until her knuckles went white, until the shaking stopped. "He's going to come back." She turned. Caleb stood at the corner of the house. She hadn't heard him approach. How long had he been listening? "I can handle Drummond," she said. "Can you?" "I've handled worse." "Have you?" She wanted to say yes, wanted to mean it, but looking at Caleb, at the way he watched her with those 2 knowing eyes, she couldn't quite make the words come out. "He's got 20 men," Caleb said. "Maybe more. He's got money and connections. He wants this land, and he's not taking no for an answer. You saw that scar-faced one. That man's killed before. I'd bet my life on it." "Then what am I supposed to do? Sell? Give up?" "I'm saying you need more than a rifle and stubbornness. That's all I've got." "No," Caleb said. "You've got me. For 2 more days. Then you're gone." He was quiet. Snow had started falling again, light flakes catching in his hair. "What if I stayed?" he said. Eliza blinked. "What?" "Through winter. You need help. Lena needs a roof that doesn't leak and food that isn't road dust. We could help each other." "I told you I can't pay." "I'm not asking for pay. I'm asking for a place to stay and work that needs doing. That's the deal." "Why would you do that?" He looked toward the house where Lena was probably still inside, waiting. "Because she deserves better than another winter on the road, and because you're trying to hold on to something good in a world that wants to take it. I respect that. Used to try doing the same thing before I gave up." "You haven't given up. You're here." "I'm here because I had nowhere else to go, but maybe that's enough. Maybe nowhere else is exactly where I'm supposed to be." Eliza wanted to say no. wanted to keep her walls up, keep everyone at arm's length, keep failing on her own terms. But she was so tired, tired of doing everything alone, tired of pretending she wasn't drowning. End of winter, she heard herself say. When the ground thaws, you're free to go. No obligations. Agreed. And if Drummond comes back with more than words, then he'll find out what a former marshal does to men who threaten people under his protection. I'm not under your protection. Caleb's eyes were steady. You are now. The next week was harder than the previous two combined. The cold set in properly. Real cold, the kind that made bones ache and breath freeze in the air. Caleb winterized everything he could, sealed gaps in the barn, reinforced the chicken coop, moved the 3 cows into the structure's most sheltered corner. He showed Eliza how to wrap pipes so they wouldn't freeze, how to bank the fire so it lasted through the night. A dozen small skills she'd never learned because Thomas had always handled them. You know a lot for a marshal, she said one evening, watching him work. Former marshal, and I grew up on a farm. Hated it at the time, couldn't wait to leave. Funny how things you run from end up being the things that save you later. Lena helped where she could. She was good with the chickens, gentle-handed and patient. The birds actually seemed to like her, which was more than they'd ever shown Eliza. You've got away with them, Eliza told her. Lena shrugged. Mama used to say animals know when you're scared, so I just try not to be scared. Smart mama. She was. No sadness in the words, just fact. The kid had learned to carry grief without letting it crush her. Eliza envied that. They fell into routines. Wake before dawn. Breakfast. Oatmeal when they had it, bread when they didn't. Work until midday. Quick meal. More work until dark. Supper. Sleep. Repeat. It should have felt like prison. Instead, it felt like breathing. Eliza couldn't remember the last time the ranch had run this smoothly. With Caleb handling the heavy repairs and Lena managing the small tasks, Eliza could focus on the cattle, on inventory, on planning how to stretch their dwindling supplies until spring. It still wouldn't be enough. She knew that. Winter was long and their stores were short, but maybe they had a chance. And then Pike Garrett rode up with news that killed that maybe dead. Drummond bought the Morrison place, Pike said without preamble. He stood in Eliza's kitchen, hat in hands, looking uncomfortable. Behind him, through the window, Caleb was splitting wood. Pike had insisted on talking to Eliza alone. When? Eliza asked. Yesterday. Paid twice what it's worth, which tells you how bad he wants the land. The Morrison place bordered Eliza's northern fence. If Drummond owned it now, he had her surrounded on 3 sides. Morrison sold? Just like that? Pike shifted his weight. They didn't have a choice. Someone poisoned their well, killed 2 horses and made the family sick. Doc said it was deliberate. Ice filled Eliza's stomach. Did they find who did it? No, but everyone knows. Knowing and proving are different things. True enough. Pike's eyes found hers. Eliza, I came here to warn you. Drummond's making a move. He's buying up every piece of land between here and the rail line. Yours is right in his middle. He's not going to stop. Then I won't sell. It's not that simple. You heard what happened to Morrison's well. Next time it could be your barn, your house. Hell, could be you. You saying I should run? I'm saying you should be smart. Take his money and get out while you still can. Eliza looked at this man who'd known Thomas, who'd helped bury him, who was now telling her to abandon everything they'd built. Get out, she said quietly. Eliza, I said get out. Pike put on his hat. At the door he paused. Your husband was a good man. Stubborn as hell, but good. He'd want you safe. He'd want me to keep what's ours. It's not yours anymore if you're dead. He left. Eliza stood alone in the kitchen, hands braced against the table, trying not to shake. Caleb came in 5 minutes later, took one look at her face and said, What happened? She told him. All of it. Morrison's well, the land grab, Pike's warning. When she finished, Caleb was quiet for a long time. He's escalating, he said finally. I know. Which means we need to escalate too. How? I've got 3 cows, a falling apart barn, and no money. What am I supposed to escalate with? Caleb walked to the window, looked out at the ranch, at Lena, who was feeding the chickens, at the land that rolled away in all directions, white now with snow, beautiful and brutal. Information, he said. We get information. Evidence. Proof that Drummond's behind what happened to Morrison. We take that to the territorial marshal. You said you turned in your badge. I did. But I still know people, still have contacts. We get proof, we go over Drummond's head, we make enough noise that he can't just make this disappear. And how do we get proof? Caleb turned from the window. We do what I used to do best. We investigate. You're one man. I'm one man who knows how criminals think, because I used to catch them for a living. Eliza wanted to believe him, wanted to think this could work, but she'd learned better than to trust hope. And if we can't get proof, she asked. His expression hardened. Then we make sure we're ready when he comes. Because he will come, Eliza. Men like Drummond always do. The investigation started small. Caleb rode to the Morrison place the next day, talked to the family, looked at the poisoned well. Came back with more questions than answers, but confirmed what they suspected. This was deliberate, professional. Someone who knew what they were doing. Drummond's not getting his hands dirty, Caleb said that night. He's hiring it done, which means there's a trail. Money exchanged, conversations, people who know things. People who won't talk, Eliza said. Not to you, but to a former marshal asking the right questions? Maybe. He started making trips to town, not the close town. That was Drummond's territory. The one 15 miles east where people were more willing to talk. He'd leave before dawn, come back after dark, always with pieces of the puzzle. A ranch hand who'd quit Drummond's crew after being asked to do questionable work. A shopkeeper who'd sold an unusual amount of arsenic to one of Drummond's men. A woman whose husband worked for Drummond and came home with more money than his wages justified. Small pieces. Nothing definitive, but a picture was forming. Meanwhile, Eliza kept the ranch running, kept watching the horizon, kept the rifle close. Lena noticed the tension. Kids always did. Are we safe here? She asked one evening, helping Eliza with dishes. Eliza wanted to lie. Wanted to say yes, everything's fine, don't worry. But she'd learned that kids could smell lies better than adults. I don't know, she said instead, but we're doing everything we can to make sure we are. Lena nodded, solemn. Papa's good at keeping us safe. He is. But he gets sad sometimes, when he thinks I'm not looking. Eliza glanced at the girl. What makes him sad? Remembering. Mama. The people he couldn't save. He thinks it's his fault. Is it? I don't think so. But he does. And that's what matters. Too wise for 8 years old. But then kids who'd lost their mothers and lived on the road grew up fast. Your papa's a good man, Eliza said. I know. He just doesn't always believe it. 3 weeks into their extended arrangement, Drummond made his next move. It happened at night. Eliza woke to the smell of smoke. She was up and moving before her brain caught up, grabbing the rifle, hitting the porch at a dead run. The barn was on fire. Not the whole barn, just the south wall, flames eating through old wood like paper, but it was spreading fast. Caleb, she screamed. He was already there, hauling the cows out one by one while Lena ran water from the well in a bucket that was pathetically too small. Eliza joined them, working the pump, filling anything that would hold water, throwing it on flames that laughed at their efforts. It was useless. The barn was going. Forget the building, Caleb yelled. Save what we can. They pulled out tools, feed, anything not nailed down. The chickens scattered into the night, hopefully alive. The cows stood in the snow, wide-eyed and lowing. The fire roared louder. By the time Pike and Samuel Garrett arrived with help from 2 other ranches, the south wall had collapsed. They formed a bucket line, kept the fire from spreading to the house, but the barn was lost. Dawn came gray and cold. The barn was a skeleton of blackened timber, still smoking. Eliza stood staring at it, face covered in soot, hands blistered from bucket handles. Caleb approached slowly. He had burns on his arms, nothing serious, but they'd hurt tomorrow. You and Lena okay? Eliza asked. We're fine. You? Fine. They were both lying. Pike walked up, face grim. Found this. He held out a piece of cloth. Expensive fabric, the kind ranch hands didn't wear, and it smelled like kerosene. Left behind on purpose, Pike said, so you'd know. Know what? Eliza asked, though she already knew. That he can reach you whenever he wants. That you're not safe. Eliza took the cloth, turned it over in her blistered hands, felt something inside her crack, and then harden into something colder. Then I guess I'll have to reach back, she said. Pike's eyes widened. Eliza, don't. Thank you for your help. You should go. You're going to get yourself killed. Maybe. But I'll die on my land, not his. The neighbors left. Lena fell asleep against Caleb's shoulder, exhausted. Caleb carried her inside, laid her on the sofa, covered her with blankets. When he came back out, Eliza was still standing in front of the ruined barn. I'm done running, she said. I know. I'm done being scared. I know. And I'm going to make him pay for this. Caleb stood beside her, looked at the ruins, at the ranch they'd spent weeks trying to save. Good, he said. Because so am I. The war had started. They just didn't know how bad it would get yet. But they were about to learn. The morning after the fire, Caleb rode out before the sun cleared the horizon. He didn't say where he was going. Eliza didn't ask. Some conversations happened in silence, in the set of a man's jaw and the way he checked his gun before saddling up. Lena watched from the porch, wrapped in a blanket that dragged in the snow behind her. He'll come back, Eliza said. I know. The girl's voice was small. He always does. But sometimes I'm afraid one day he won't. Eliza understood that fear. Had lived with it herself when Thomas used to ride out to handle ranch business, back when handling business didn't mean confronting men who burned barns in the night. Your father knows what he's doing. That's what scares me. Smart kid. Too smart. They spent the morning salvaging what they could from the barn. Most of it was ruined, charred wood, melted tools, feed contaminated with ash. But there were pieces worth saving. A harness. Some nails in a tin that had somehow survived. A shovel with a singed handle, but the blade intact. The 3 cows stood in the yard looking confused and cold. Without the barn, they had nowhere to go. Eliza rigged a temporary shelter using canvas and posts, something that would hold until they figured out what came next, if there was a next. Lena helped without complaint, hauling things too heavy for an 8-year-old, but managing anyway. She had her father's stubbornness. Or maybe stubbornness was just what you learned when the world kept knocking you down and you kept having to stand back up. Miss Eliza? Eliza looked up from tying canvas. Yeah? Are we going to die? The question came out matter-of-fact, like asking about the weather. Eliza's hand stopped moving. What makes you ask that? Papa thinks I don't hear things, but I do. I heard what those men said. About accidents. About people dying in winter. Eliza climbed down from the makeshift shelter, crouched in front of the girl. Lena's eyes were too old for her face. I'm not going to lie to you, Eliza said. Things are bad. The man who burned our barn wants this land, and he's willing to hurt people to get it. That's the truth. Okay. But here's the other truth. Your father used to catch bad men for a living. He's good at it, and I've survived out here longer than anyone thought I would. We're not easy to kill. Mama wasn't easy to kill either, but she died anyway. The words landed like stones in water, sinking deep. Eliza didn't have an answer to that. Couldn't argue with the logic of a child who'd learned that being good and strong didn't make you bulletproof. You're right, Eliza said. Sometimes bad things happen and there's nothing we can do about it. But sometimes we can fight back. Your father's fighting, I'm fighting, and we need you to keep being brave, keep helping, keep being the reason we're fighting for. Lena thought about that, then nodded once, solemn as a judge. Okay, I can do that. I know you can. They went back to work. The canvas shelter wasn't pretty, but it would keep the cows from freezing. Small victories. You took them where you could find them. Caleb came back 3 hours after noon, horse-lathered despite the cold. He dismounted fast, movements tight, with something that might have been anger or might have been something worse. Inside, he said, both of you. They gathered in the kitchen. Caleb paced like a caged animal, hat in hands, working the brim until Eliza thought he might tear it in half. What happened? She asked. Talked to a man who used to work for Drummond. He quit last month, wouldn't say why. Took some convincing, but he finally opened up. And? Drummond's planning something big. Not just buying land, he's got investors coming in from back east, railroad men. They want to run a line through here, and Drummond promised them clear access. No messy property disputes, no holdouts. Eliza felt her stomach drop. When? Spring. Soon as the ground thaws. They've already got surveyors lined up, construction crews ready. This whole thing is bigger than one rancher trying to expand. It's a land grab backed by serious money. Then we take it to the marshal, show them what he did to Morrison, what he did to us. I tried. Went to the marshal's office in Belton. You know who I found sitting in the waiting room? Drummond, laughing with the deputy like they were old friends. He bought them. Looks that way. Or scared them. Doesn't matter which. Point is, official channels are closed. Eliza sank into a chair. The weight of it pressed down like a physical thing. So what do we do? Caleb stopped pacing, looked at her with those marshal's eyes, the ones that had seen too much and decided to see more anyway. We get creative, he said. Lena, who'd been sitting quiet at the table, spoke up. Papa, what does that mean? Means we stop playing by their rules and start making our own. That sounds dangerous. It is. He crouched down to her level. Which is why I need you to promise me something. If things get bad, if I tell you to run, you run. Don't argue. Don't look back. Just go. I'm not leaving you. Lena, no. Her small jaw set in a line that was pure Caleb Rourke. Mama made me promise to stay with you. I'm not breaking that promise. Father and daughter stared at each other. Some battle of wills that Eliza couldn't begin to navigate. Finally, Caleb sighed. You're too much like your mother. You say that like it's bad. It's terrifying. She was terrifying too. But he said it soft, with something that might have been love or grief or both tangled together. He stood, turned to Eliza. I need to ask you something, and I need an honest answer. All right. How much do you trust me? She thought about it, really thought. This man who'd showed up 3 weeks ago, stranger with a daughter, and a past he barely talked about. Who'd fixed her fences and patched her roof and slept in a barn that was now ash. Who stood in her kitchen talking about breaking rules and fighting men with railroad money. Enough, she said. Enough for what? Enough to do something stupid if you've got a plan. The corner of his mouth twitched. Might have been a smile. I've got a plan. Is it a good plan? It's a plan. That'll have to do. They talked through the night. Caleb laid it out piece by piece, and Eliza listened with growing certainty that they were either going to pull off something impossible or get themselves killed trying. The plan was simple in theory, complicated in execution. They needed proof that Drummond was behind the attacks. Not circumstantial evidence, real proof. The kind that couldn't be ignored or bought off. He's careful, Caleb said. Doesn't do his own dirty work. But he's got lieutenants. Men who follow orders. And men who follow orders make mistakes. You want to catch one. I want to make one talk. How? By giving them a target they can't resist. Eliza understood before he said it. Me. You. The stubborn widow who won't sell. If we make enough noise, make it look like you're vulnerable, they'll come. And when they do, we'll be ready. It was a terrible plan. Risky in ways that made Eliza's hands shake when she thought about it too long. But it was the only plan they had. What do we need? She asked. Caleb pulled out a piece of paper, started making a list. First, we need allies. People Drummond hasn't bought or scared. Your neighbors, the ones who aren't on his payroll. We need them watching, ready to testify if this goes to trial. Pike and Samuel might help, maybe. Talk to them, convince them. We need eyes and ears. What else? Supplies. If this goes bad, we might need to hold out for a while. Food, ammunition, medical supplies. Anything you can spare or beg or borrow. I've got nothing to spare. Then we borrow, or we steal. I'm past caring about the fine print. Eliza looked at this man who used to uphold the law, now talking about breaking it. Wondered what it cost him to cross that line. Wondered if she was about to find out herself. When do we start? She asked. Tomorrow. We've got maybe 2 weeks before Drummond makes his next move. We use that time to prepare. And Lena? They both looked at the girl who'd fallen asleep at the table, head on her folded arms. She stays close, Caleb said, where I can see her, where I can protect her. You can't protect everyone. Watch me. The next 2 weeks were a blur of preparation and paranoia. Eliza rode to the Garrett ranch, swallowed her pride, and asked for help. Pike listened. Samuel didn't. You're asking us to go up against Drummond, Samuel said. Man's got money and muscle. What have you got? A burned barn and a stranger with a gun. I've got proof he's committing crimes. I've got witnesses. I've got, nothing. You've got nothing that'll stand up when his lawyers get involved. Pike put a hand on his brother's shoulder. Sam, let her finish. Why? So she can get us killed too? Drummond's already circling us. He wants our land next. You think I'm stupid enough to paint a target on our backs by helping her? I think you're too scared to do what's right. Samuel's face went red. You calling me a coward? I'm calling it like I see it. The brothers stared at each other. Then Samuel spat in the dirt, turned, and walked away. Pike watched him go, then looked at Eliza. He's not wrong. This is dangerous. But you're not wrong either. Drummond can't be allowed to just take what he wants. So you'll help? I'll watch. I'll listen. If something happens and you need testimony, I'll give it. But I'm not getting my hands bloody unless there's no other choice. It wasn't everything, but it was something. Eliza took it. She visited 3 other ranches, got similar responses. Fear everywhere, courage nowhere. Drummond had done his job well. Everyone was too scared to move, except for one person. Martha Cunningham ran a small spread east of Eliza's land. She was 60-something, hard as iron, and had buried 2 husbands who'd both had the sense to die before she could divorce them. Drummond's a pig, Martha said without preamble. Tried to buy me out last year. I told him where he could stick his money. He didn't like that. Did he retaliate? Killed my dog. Poisoned him. Left the body on my porch so I'd find it. Jesus. Didn't have proof it was him, but I know. Same way you know he burned your barn. Eliza nodded. I'm going to stop him. Or try, anyway. How? Eliza told her the plan. Martha listened, face unreadable. When Eliza finished, Martha was quiet for a long moment. Then she stood, walked to a cabinet, and pulled out a shotgun. I'm in, she said. It's dangerous. Everything worth doing is. When do we start? Having Martha on their side changed things. She knew people, had connections that came from 60-plus years of living in the territory. She spread the word quietly, carefully. Found others who were tired of being scared. Not many, but enough. Meanwhile, Caleb worked on fortifications. He reinforced the house windows, created sight lines for defense, cached weapons in strategic locations. He moved like a man preparing for war because that's what this was. Lena helped where she could, but mostly stayed close to Eliza. The girl was quieter than usual. Eliza caught her staring out windows sometimes, watching the horizon like she expected monsters to appear. You okay? Eliza asked one evening. I'm scared, Lena said. Simple, honest. Me too. Really? Really? Anyone who's not scared right now is either stupid or lying. Papa says fear is good. Says it keeps you sharp. Your papa's right. But he also says you can't let it control you, that you have to do what's right even when you're afraid. Also right. Lena looked up at her. Are we doing the right thing? Eliza thought about lying, thought about giving the easy answer. But this kid deserved better. I think so, she said. But I won't know for sure until it's over. Sometimes you just have to make the choice and live with what comes after. What if what comes after is bad? Then we deal with it, together. Lena nodded, seemed to accept that. Went back to watching the window. Still scared, but standing anyway. The break came on the 12th day. Caleb was in town, the far town, the one where people still talked, when he saw him. One of Drummond's men, the scar-faced one from the visit. He was in the saloon, drinking heavy, talking loud. Caleb sat 3 tables away, hat low, listening. Boss wants it done quiet, Scarface said to his companion. No more fires, too obvious. This time we make it look like an accident. How? Spooked cattle, stampede through the house. Widow gets trampled, everyone says it's a tragedy, Drummond buys the land from the estate. When? 3 nights, new moon. Won't be able to see us coming. Caleb's hand tightened on his glass. Every instinct screamed to stand up, walk over there, break the man's jaw. But he was 1 against 2 in a saloon full of Drummond's employees. He'd get killed, and the information would die with him. So he sat, listened, memorized every word. Then he left, rode back to the ranch like the devil was chasing him. 3 days, he told Eliza. They're coming in 3 days. She felt her blood go cold. You're sure? Heard it straight from one of them. They're planning to stampede the cattle through the house, make it look like an accident. We don't have cattle anymore, just 3 cows. They don't know that, probably assume you've still got a herd. Eliza's mind raced. So we use that. Let them think we're vulnerable. Let them come. And then? Then we show them what a mistake that was. They spent the next 3 days preparing. Caleb reached out to his contacts, the ones he still had from his marshal days. Got word to the territorial office in Helena, bypassing the corrupt local law. It was a long shot, but if they could get federal marshals interested, Drummond's local connections wouldn't matter. Martha Cunningham brought 3 men she trusted. Pike Garrett showed up on the second day, alone. His brother hadn't come, but Pike was there. That counted for something. Samuel thinks I'm stupid, Pike said. Maybe I am, but I can't stand by and watch this happen. Thank you, Eliza said. Don't thank me yet. We might all be dead in 2 days. Then we'll die trying. They set up positions. The house became a fortress. Martha and her men took the north side. Pike covered the east. Caleb positioned himself where he could see the main approach. Eliza stayed mobile, ready to move where needed. Lena they hid in the cellar with strict instructions not to come out unless Eliza or Caleb came for her personally. I don't want to hide, Lena said. I don't care what you want, Caleb told her. You're staying down there where it's safe. But no, this isn't a negotiation. You stay hidden, you stay quiet, you stay alive. That's the only thing that matters. Tears welled in the girl's eyes. I don't want to lose you like I lost Mama. Caleb's face cracked. He pulled her into a hug, held her tight. You won't, he said. I promise. Promises made in the shadow of violence rarely held, but he said it anyway. Because what else could he say? The night before the attack, Eliza couldn't sleep. She sat on the porch wrapped in a blanket, rifle across her lap, watching stars wheel overhead. Caleb found her there. You should rest, he said. Can't. He sat beside her. They were quiet for a while, just breathing, existing in the cold Montana night. I'm sorry, he said finally. For what? For bringing this down on you. If we hadn't stayed, if I'd kept moving, then I'd be alone when Drummond came, and I'd already be dead. Maybe. Definitely. At least now I've got a chance. She looked at him. You didn't cause this, Caleb. Drummond did. You're just helping me survive it. If we survive it. When? When we survive it. He smiled just a little. You're an optimist. I'm desperate. Different thing. Not that different. They sat in silence again. Then Caleb said quiet, if this goes bad, if I don't make it, I need you to promise me something. Don't. Eliza. I'm not making deathbed promises the night before a fight. We're both walking out of this alive. That's the deal. Life doesn't make deals. Then we'll force it to. He looked at her, something shifting in his expression. You're tougher than I gave you credit for. I've had to be. World doesn't leave much choice. Still, most people would have sold by now, run, saved themselves. Most people didn't watch their husband build this place from nothing, didn't make promises to hold on to it no matter what. She paused. Thomas deserves better than me giving up. Thomas got lucky having you. Thomas got dead. Because the world's cruel, not because you weren't enough. The words hit harder than they should have. Eliza felt her throat tighten, forced it down. We should sleep, she said, standing. Big day tomorrow. Eliza. She stopped, didn't turn around. Whatever happens, Caleb said, you should know that staying here, helping you, fighting this fight, it's the first thing I've done in 2 years that feels like it matters. So thank you for letting us stay, for giving me something worth fighting for again. She didn't know what to say to that, didn't trust her voice not to break, so she just nodded once and went inside. Behind her, Caleb stayed on the porch, watching the dark, waiting for dawn and whatever it would bring. The day of reckoning came cold and clear. New moon night would fall in 12 hours. They had until then to make final preparations. Eliza checked weapons. Caleb walked the perimeter one last time. Martha and her men played cards in the kitchen, trying to pretend this was just another day. Pike cleaned his rifle methodically, the same motion over and over until Eliza thought he might wear the barrel smooth. Lena stayed in the cellar. Eliza brought her food at midday, found the girl sitting in the dark with her mother's old shawl wrapped around her shoulders. "I'm scared," Lena whispered. "I know, baby." "Will Papa be okay?" "He will. He's the toughest man I've ever met." Mama thought that too. Didn't keep her safe. Eliza sat down beside her. "Your mama didn't die because your papa wasn't tough enough. She died because sometimes the world is random and cruel and takes people we love. But your papa's still here, still fighting, and he's got more reason to win than ever." "Why?" "Because of you. You're his reason." Lena thought about that. "What's your reason?" Eliza hadn't expected the question, had to think about the answer. "I guess I'm tired of letting bad men win," she said finally. "Tired of running, tired of being scared. This ranch is mine. Thomas died for it, and I'll be damned if I let some bastard take it just because he's got money and guns." "That's a good reason." "Thanks. Now eat your food and try to rest. Long night coming." She left Lena there, climbed back upstairs, and found Caleb waiting. "How is she?" he asked. "Scared? Brave? Both? Good mix. Learned it from her father." They looked at each other. Something passed between them, some understanding that didn't need words. "Positions in 2 hours," Caleb said. "Everyone knows their jobs?" "They know." "Then we wait." Waiting was the hardest part. Watching the sun crawl across the sky. Watching shadows lengthen. Watching night arrive like a predator. The new moon rose invisible. Darkness fell complete. And in that darkness, Eliza heard horses. She was at her window, second floor, watching the approach. Caleb was downstairs. Martha and her men spread throughout the house. Pike in the barn, or what was left of it. The horses came from the west. 6 riders, maybe more. Hard to count in the dark. They moved slow, cautious, thinking they had surprise on their side. They were wrong. Caleb's voice drifted up from below, barely a whisper. "Let them get close. Don't fire until I do." The riders approached the makeshift cattle shelter, stopped. Eliza could hear their voices, low and confused. "Where's the herd?" "Boss said she had cattle." "Just 3 cows. This won't work." "Then we improvise. Burn the house." Same result. Eliza's blood went cold. Caleb had counted on them trying to stampede non-existent cattle, giving away their position without accomplishing anything. But if they went straight to burning? A match flared in the darkness. "Now!" Caleb's voice cracked like a whip. Gunfire erupted from 5 positions simultaneously. The night lit up with muzzle flashes. Men screamed. Horses bolted. Chaos consumed the darkness. Eliza fired at shadows, at movement, at anything that wasn't her people. Couldn't tell if she hit anything. Didn't matter. The point was to drive them back, make them scatter, prove they weren't easy prey. The fight lasted maybe 3 minutes, felt like hours. Then the surviving riders broke, turned, fled into the darkness, trailing curses and blood. Silence fell hard. "Anyone hit?" Caleb called. Responses came back. Pike good, Martha good, her men good, Eliza good. They'd won. For tonight, they'd won. But Eliza knew this wasn't over. Drummond had just learned they could fight back. Next time, he'd come harder. They gathered in the kitchen, checking weapons, catching breath. One of Martha's men had taken a graze across his shoulder. Not serious, but it bled impressive. "We hurt them," Pike said. "Saw at least 2 go down." "They'll be back," Caleb said, "and they'll bring more men." "So what do? We don't wait for them. We take the fight to Drummond." Everyone looked at him. "You're crazy," Martha said. "He's got 20 men. We've got 6. 7, counting Eliza. And we don't need to beat all of them. We just need to make enough noise that the law can't ignore us." "The law's on his side." "Local law. But I sent word to Helena, federal marshals. If we can hold out long enough for them to arrive, prove Drummond's behind this, he's done. And if they don't come," Caleb's expression went hard, Then we do what needs doing anyway. They argued for an hour. Voices raised, tempers frayed, but eventually they agreed. They couldn't stay on defense forever. Had to make a move. The plan was simple. Hit Drummond's ranch, create evidence, force his hand, make him come out into the open where federal law could reach him. It was reckless, probably suicidal. But staying put was death by degrees, and at least this way they'd go down swinging. They'd move in 2 days. Give themselves time to plan, to rest, to prepare for what might be their last fight. Eliza went down to the cellar that night to check on Lena, found the girl awake, sitting in the dark. "Is it over?" Lena asked. "For tonight. But not forever." "No, not forever." Lena was quiet. Then, "Miss Eliza, if something happens to Papa, will you take care of me?" The question stole Eliza's breath. "Nothing's going to happen to your Papa." "But if it does?" "Lena, please, I need to know someone will be there." Eliza knelt down, took the girl's small hands in her own scarred ones. "If anything happens to your father," she said, each word careful, "you'll have a home here as long as you need one. I promise." "Thank you." "But your father's going to be fine. He's too stubborn to die." Mama was stubborn too. "Your mother didn't have me watching her back." That got a small smile. Progress. Eliza climbed back upstairs, found Caleb on the porch again. Seemed like they kept ending up here in the dark, waiting for dawn. 2 days, he said without preamble. 2 days, she agreed. You don't have to come. Could stay here, hold the fort. You don't have to play hero. Could let the marshals handle it. Marshals might not come. Might not. But you're going anyway. Yeah. Then so am I. They stood shoulder to shoulder, looking out at the land that had become a battlefield. Somewhere in the dark, wounded men were riding back to Drummond, reporting failure. And somewhere else, Drummond was planning his response. The war wasn't over. It had just begun. But for the first time since Thomas died, Eliza felt like she wasn't fighting alone, and maybe that was enough to tip the scales. The 2 days before the raid passed like sand through clenched fingers, fast and slow at the same time, each hour waited with the knowledge of what was coming. Caleb spent most of the first day scouting. He rode out before dawn, came back after dark with a hand-drawn map of Drummond's ranch, and a face that said he'd seen things he didn't like. 23 men, he said, spreading the map on the kitchen table. I counted them myself. Most are hired guns, not ranchers. They're living in the bunkhouse here, main house here, barn complex here. Eliza studied the crude drawing. Where does Drummond sleep? Main house. Second floor, north-facing window, 2 guards on rotation outside his door, so we can't get to him directly. Not without going through a small army first. Martha leaned over the map, squinting. What about the records? You said he keeps documentation of his land deals. Office. Ground floor of the main house. That's our target. Pike traced a finger along the approach route Caleb had marked. This puts us crossing open ground for 200 yards. They'll see us coming. Not if we come at night. Not if we create a distraction. What kind of distraction? One of Martha's men asked. Caleb's expression went cold. The kind that makes them forget about their filing cabinets. They worked through the plan piece by piece. It wasn't elegant, wasn't safe, but it had a chance of working, which was more than nothing. The distraction would be Martha and her men hitting the southern fence line, making noise, drawing attention. While Drummond's forces responded, Caleb and Eliza would slip in from the north, hit the office, grab whatever documentation they could find, and get out before anyone knew they'd been there. What about me? Pike asked. You're the anchor, Caleb said. You stay at the extraction point with fresh horses. If things go sideways, we'll need a clean exit. I can fight. I know you can. But if we all go in and none of us make it out, this whole thing's for nothing. We need someone who can carry the evidence to Helena if we fail. Pike didn't like it. Eliza could see the argument building behind his eyes, but he swallowed it, nodded once. All right. But you better not get yourselves killed. I'm not explaining that to Lena. Speaking of Lena, that was the hard part. Eliza found the girl in the cellar again, drawing pictures in the dirt floor with a stick. Pictures of horses and houses and people who all seemed to be smiling. Hey, Eliza said softly. Lena looked up. Is it time? Tomorrow night, your father and I are going to go do something dangerous. I know. I heard you talking. Of course she had. Kids heard everything, especially things you didn't want them to. Pike's going to stay with you, Eliza continued. If we're not back by dawn, he's going to take you to Helena, to the territorial office. They'll keep you safe. I don't want to go to Helena. I want to stay with you and Papa. I know, but sometimes we don't get what we want. Lena set down her stick. Are you going to die? The question came out flat. No emotion, like she was asking about the weather. I'm going to try very hard not to. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. Lena stood, brushed dirt from her dress. She was small for 8, skinny from too many meals missed on the road, but she stood straight, chin up, eyes clear. My mama told me once that being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means being scared and doing the thing anyway. Your mama was smart. She was. And she'd tell you the same thing I'm going to tell you. Come back. Please. Papa needs you. I think maybe you need him too. The words hit like a punch to the chest. Eliza opened her mouth to deny it, to say she didn't need anyone, that she'd been fine on her own for months. But looking at this little girl who'd lost her mother and might lose her father, who was trying so hard to be brave in a world that kept taking things from her, Eliza couldn't lie. I'll do my best, she said. Promise? I promise I'll try. It was the most honest thing she could offer. Lena seemed to understand. She nodded, then went back to her drawings. Adding more people to the pictures, more smiles. Like if she drew enough happiness, she could make it real. Eliza climbed back upstairs with a weight in her chest that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with the possibility of leaving that kid alone in the world. That night, she couldn't sleep again. Sat on her bed, cleaning her rifle for the 3rd time, checking the action, counting ammunition. She had 20 rounds, Caleb had 30. Against 23 men, it wouldn't be enough. A knock on her door, soft. Come in. Caleb entered, closing the door behind him. He looked exhausted, lines around his eyes that hadn't been there 3 weeks ago. Can't sleep either? He asked. Doesn't seem worth the effort. He sat on the edge of her bed, careful to keep distance between them. Proper. They'd been proper this whole time, even living in the same house, even planning to die together tomorrow. I need to tell you something, he said. All right. When I was a marshal, I made a lot of enemies. Some of them are still out there. If something happens to me tomorrow, if I don't make it, those enemies might come looking for Lena. I won't let them find her. I know, but you should know their names. Know what you're watching for. He pulled out a scrap of paper, handed it to her. 3 names written in careful script. These men would use her to get to me, or to get revenge on me. Either way, she's not safe if they know she exists. Eliza looked at the names, committed them to memory. I'll protect her. Even if it means running, leaving this place? The question hurt. This land was everything. Thomas had died for it. She'd been willing to die for it herself. But looking at Caleb's face, seeing the fear there for his daughter, Eliza found her answer. Even then, she said, something shifted in his expression. Relief, gratitude, something else she couldn't name. Thank you, he said quietly. Don't thank me yet. We might both walk out of this alive. You really believe that? I have to. The alternative is too depressing. He almost smiled. You're tougher than you look. I look pretty tough. True. You look like you could chew nails and spit bullets. Damn right. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Caleb said, if we do make it out, if this actually works, what happens after? After? After Drummond's arrested. After the railroad finds another route. After winter ends and spring comes and you've still got your ranch. Liza hadn't let herself think that far ahead. Hadn't dared hope for an after. I guess I keep ranching, she said. Fix the barn. Buy more cattle. Try to make this place into something Thomas would recognize. Alone? The question hung in the air between them. I've been alone for months, Eliza said carefully. I can manage. You could, but you don't have to. Her heart did something complicated in her chest. Caleb, I'm just saying, if you needed a hand, if you wanted help, Lena and I, we could stay. Not temporary. Not just through winter. Actually stay. Why would you do that? Because in 3 weeks, this place has felt more like home than anywhere I've been in 2 years. Because Lena's happier here than I've seen her since Anna died. Because when I think about leaving, about going back on the road, I can't picture it anymore. You barely know me. I know you're stubborn and brave, and you don't quit even when you should. I know you've been kind to my daughter when you didn't have to be. I know you're the first person in a long time who's made me want to stay in one place. Eliza's throat felt tight. That's not knowing someone. That's seeing what you want to see. Maybe. Or maybe it's seeing what's actually there. She wanted to argue, wanted to push him away, keep her walls up, stay safe behind the armor she'd built since Thomas died. But she was so tired of being alone, so tired of fighting everything by herself. Ask me again after tomorrow, she said finally, if we're both still breathing. Deal. He stood to leave. At the door, he paused. Eliza? Yeah? For what it's worth, Anna would have liked you. You remind me of her. Same steel spine, same inability to back down from a fight. She sounds terrifying. She was. I loved her for it. He left before she could respond. Eliza sat alone in the dark, rifle across her lap, thinking about dead wives and possible futures, and the way Caleb had said the word loved in past tense, like he'd finally accepted she was gone. Dawn came gray and cold, the day of the raid. They gathered in the kitchen one last time, Martha and her 3 men, Pike, Caleb, Eliza, 7 people about to go up against an army. Everyone knows their part? Caleb asked. Nods all around. We move at midnight. Martha's team creates the distraction at 12:15. That gives Eliza and me 30 minutes to get in position. We hit the office, grab what we can, get out. Rendezvous point is the old Miller cabin, 2 miles north. If anyone doesn't show by dawn, assume they're not coming. And if you get caught? Pike asked. We don't. But if you do? Caleb's jaw tightened. Then you take Lena and those documents and you ride like hell to Helena. You make sure the marshals know what happened here. You make sure Drummond pays. That's a terrible backup plan. It's the only one we've got. They spent the day preparing, checking weapons, packing supplies, trying not to think about all the ways this could go wrong. Eliza wrote a letter, just in case. Instructions for what to do with the ranch if she didn't make it. Where the deed was hidden, who to contact. She sealed it, gave it to Pike. Don't open this unless you have to, she said. I won't have to. But if you do. He took the letter, tucked it inside his coat. You're coming back, Eliza, both of you. From your mouth to whatever's listening. Caleb said goodbye to Lena in the cellar. Eliza didn't watch, gave them privacy for that. But she heard Lena crying through the floorboards, heard Caleb's low voice trying to soothe her, trying to make promises he might not be able to keep. When he came back upstairs, his eyes were red. She's scared, he said. She should be. I told her we'd be back before she wakes up. Think that's true? I have to. Night fell. They saddled horses, checked weapons one last time. Martha and her men rode out first, heading south to circle around to their position. Pike stayed behind with Lena, holding her tight while she cried into his shoulder. Caleb and Eliza mounted up. The moon was a sliver, barely enough light to see by, perfect for what they needed. Ready? Caleb asked. No, never. Not in a million years. Let's go, Eliza said. They rode north into the darkness, leaving behind everything they were trying to save. The approach to Drummond's ranch took 2 hours. They moved slow, quiet, walking the horses through snow that muffled hoofbeats. Every shadow looked like a guard. Every sound was a gun cocking. But they made it to the tree line north of the main house without being spotted. From here they could see the compound, lights in the bunkhouse, 2 guards patrolling the perimeter, smoke rising from the main house chimney. Caleb checked his pocket watch. 11:45. 30 minutes, he whispered. They waited. Time crawled. Eliza's hands were numb from cold, or nerves, or both. She kept flexing them, trying to keep blood flowing, trying to stay ready. At 12:15, the southern fence line exploded with gunfire. The guards' heads snapped around. Shouts erupted from the bunkhouse. Men poured out, pulling on coats, grabbing weapons, running toward the distraction. Now, Caleb said. They moved fast and low, covering the open ground in seconds. Reached the main house. The back door was locked. Caleb pulled out a thin piece of metal, worked the lock. "Where'd you learn that?" Eliza whispered. "Marshalling teaches you all kinds of useful skills." The lock clicked. They slipped inside. The house was warm, dim. Hallway stretched ahead, stairs to the right. The office was straight back, according to Caleb's reconnaissance. They moved down the hallway, boots silent on expensive carpet. More gunfire from the south, shouting. Drummond's voice from upstairs barking orders. They reached the office door, also locked. Caleb picked it faster this time. Inside, filing cabinets lined one wall. A desk covered in papers, ledgers stacked on shelves. This was it. This was what they needed. "Grab everything that looks important," Caleb said. Eliza started pulling files, land deeds, purchase agreements, letters from the railroad. Some of it was legitimate business, but some... "Caleb, look at this." She held up a ledger. Payments to various men. Sums that didn't make sense for ranch work. And next to some names, notations. Morrison Well. Harrow Barn. Douglas Fence. Evidence. Direct evidence. "That's it," Caleb said. "That's what we need." He grabbed the ledger, started stuffing it into his saddlebag along with other documents. Eliza kept searching, pulling anything that looked useful. Then the shooting stopped. Silence fell over the ranch. Wrong silence. The kind that meant Martha's distraction had failed or been overwhelmed. "Time to go," Caleb said. They turned for the door and found it blocked. Drummond stood in the hallway, flanked by two men with rifles. He was smiling. "Mrs. Harrow," he said pleasantly, "I was wondering when you'd work up the courage to do something stupid." Caleb's hand dropped to his gun. "I wouldn't," Drummond said. "My men have you covered from 3 angles. You'd be dead before you cleared leather." "What did you do to my people?" Eliza demanded. "The ones making noise on my southern fence? They're being rounded up as we speak. Seems they forgot I have 23 men to their 4. Her stomach dropped. Martha. The others. Captured or killed. "Let them go," she said. "This is between us." "Oh, I don't think so. This stopped being just between us when you decided to trespass on my property and steal from me." He gestured to the saddlebag full of documents. "I'll take those back, thank you." "Over my dead body." "That can be arranged." Caleb shifted slightly. Eliza recognized the movement. He was calculating odds, looking for an angle. "Don't try it, Marshal Rourke," Drummond said. "Yes, I know who you are. Did my research after your first visit. Former territorial marshal. Wanted for questioning in Wyoming over a botched protection detail. I imagine the territorial office would be very interested to know you're here." "I imagine they'd be more interested to know you're committing fraud and attempted murder," Caleb said. "With what proof? Your stolen documents? Inadmissible in court. Obtained illegally." Drummond's smile widened. "I've got lawyers, Marshal. Good ones. Everything I've done is technically legal, or legal enough that it won't matter." "Poisoning wells is legal? Prove I did it. Prove any of it. You can't. And now you've conveniently broken into my home, assaulted my men, and given me every right to defend my property." He nodded to his men. They raised their rifles. This was it. This was how it ended. Caught in a hallway with nowhere to run. But Caleb wasn't done. "You're right," he said. "I can't prove anything, but I don't have to." "What?" "Because the federal marshals I contacted 2 weeks ago, they're already here. Been watching your ranch for 3 days, waiting for you to make a move. And you just confessed to everything while they listened." Drummond's smile faltered. "You're bluffing." "Am I? Because I'm pretty sure that's Marshal Garrett behind you right now." Everyone turned. The hallway was empty. Caleb moved. He hit the floor, dragging Eliza with him as gunfire erupted. Drummond's men fired where they'd been standing, bullets punching into the office wall. Caleb returned fire. 2 shots that took down 1 guard. Eliza rolled, came up shooting, got the second guard in the shoulder. He dropped his rifle, screaming. Drummond ran. "Go!" Caleb shouted. "Get the documents out." "Not without you." "I'll be right behind you." She wanted to argue, wanted to stay and fight, but the documents were what mattered. Getting proof out was what mattered. She grabbed the saddlebag, ran for the back door. Behind her, more gunfire. Caleb's voice shouting, boots pounding. She hit the door, burst into the cold night, ran for the horses. Men appeared from the darkness. Drummond's men, returning from the south. She was surrounded. Then Pike was there, coming out of nowhere on horseback, firing a shotgun that cleared a path. "Ride!" he screamed. She mounted, kicked her horse into a gallop. Pike rode beside her, still firing. Behind them, the ranch erupted into chaos. Gunfire everywhere, shouting, confusion. Where was Caleb? She wanted to turn back, wanted to find him, but Pike grabbed her reins, forced her horse forward. "He said to get you out, so that's what I'm doing." They rode hard, snow kicking up behind them. A mile, 2 miles. The old Miller cabin appeared ahead. They pulled up, dismounted. Eliza spun, looking back the way they'd come. No sign of Caleb, no sign of Martha or her men. "We have to go back," she said. "We wait," Pike said. "Like we planned." He could be dying. And if we ride back now, we'll die too. Then all of this was for nothing. She knew he was right, hated that he was right. But she stood there in the snow, watching the horizon, waiting for horses that might never come. An hour passed. Nothing. 2 hours. Still nothing. Dawn started to gray the eastern sky. "Eliza," Pike said gently, "no. We have to go. We have to get these documents to Helena. I'm not leaving him. He'd want you to finish this. You know he would." She did know. That was the worst part. Caleb would absolutely trade his life for those documents, for the chance to bring Drummond down. But she'd made promises. To him. To Lena. 5 more minutes, she said. Pike nodded. They waited. Dawn came fully, painting snow gold and red. Beautiful and terrible. No horses appeared. "Time," Pike said. Eliza's vision blurred. She blinked hard, forcing it clear. "All right," she said. "Let's—" Hoofbeats. She spun. 3 horses coming fast from the south. Martha in front, one of her men behind her, and Caleb slumped forward in his saddle, holding on with one hand. They pulled up. Caleb half fell off his horse. Blood soaked his left side. "I'm okay," he said immediately. "It's not bad. You're bleeding." "Just a graze. Looks worse than it is." Martha dismounted, looking grim. "Lost 2 men, Johnson and Kent. They didn't make it." "I'm sorry," Eliza said. "They knew the risks, but Drummond's going to pay for it." She held up another saddlebag. "More documents, grabbed during the chaos. Got his private correspondence," she said. "Letters from the railroad, orders to his men, everything." Caleb swayed on his feet. Eliza caught him. "We need to get you to a doctor," she said. "We need to get to Helena. Doctor can wait." "You're going to bleed to death." "Not before we finish this, stubborn bastard." But looking into his eyes, seeing the determination there despite the pain, Eliza knew arguing was pointless. "Help me wrap it," she said to Pike. They bandaged Caleb's side as best they could. The wound was deep but clean. Bullet had gone through without hitting anything vital. He'd live if they kept pressure on it. "Can you ride?" Pike asked. "Have to." They mounted up. 6 riders now instead of 7. 2 men lost. The price of fighting. But they had the documents. They had proof. Helena was 3 days hard riding. They'd make it in 2, pushing through the pain and exhaustion. As they rode north, Eliza looked back one last time. Smoke rose from Drummond's ranch. Something was burning. Maybe the bunkhouse. Maybe something else. "What happened after I left?" she asked Caleb. He was pale, gripping his reins with white knuckles. "Federal marshals showed up. Turns out I wasn't bluffing. They arrested Drummond's men. Drummond got away in the chaos. But he's done. He knows it." "So we won?" "We survived. Same thing, sometimes." They rode through the day and into the night, stopping only when the horses couldn't go further. Caleb's wound bled through the bandages twice. Each time they stopped, rewrapped, kept moving. He was getting weaker. Eliza could see it in how he sat his horse, how his eyes glazed with fever. "Stay with me," she kept saying. "Just stay with me." "Not going anywhere. Made a promise to Lena." "You made a promise to me too." He looked at her through pain-clouded eyes. "What promise was that?" "To ask me again, after this was over." Despite everything, he smiled. "We're not done yet." "Close enough." On the second day they reached Helena, rode straight to the territorial office, horses lathered, riders half dead. Federal marshals met them at the door. The same ones who'd shown up at Drummond's ranch, who'd been watching from the shadows. Marshal Thompson took the documents from Eliza's shaking hands. "This everything?" he asked. "Everything we could carry." He flipped through the ledgers, the letters, the evidence they'd risked their lives for. His expression hardened with each page. "This is enough," he said finally. "More than enough. Carter Drummond is going to prison for a very long time." "And my people?" Martha demanded. "The men he killed. We'll add murder to the charges, along with fraud, conspiracy, intimidation, arson, attempted murder. By the time we're done, he won't see daylight again." It should have felt like victory, should have felt like triumph. Instead, Eliza just felt tired and worried about the man bleeding beside her. "He needs a doctor," she told Thompson. "There's one across the street. Go. We'll take your statements later." They got Caleb to the doctor's office, a gray-haired man who took one look at the wound and started barking orders. Clean water, bandages, whiskey for the pain. He worked for an hour while Eliza paced outside. Pike sat with her, saying nothing, just being there. Finally, the door opened. "He'll live," the doctor said. "Lost blood, has a fever, but the wound's clean. Keep him still for a week, change the dressings twice a day. He'll be fine." Eliza's knees went weak with relief. "Can I see him?" "He's sleeping, but yes." She went in. Caleb lay on a cot, bandaged and pale, but breathing steady. She sat beside him, took his hand. His eyes opened, struggled to focus. "We made it?" he asked. "We made it. Documents?" "With the marshals. Drummond's done." He closed his eyes. "Good. That's good. You need to rest." "In a minute. First," he squeezed her hand weakly. "First, I need to ask you something." "Caleb, it can wait." "Can't. Been thinking about it since we left your ranch. If I don't ask now, might not get another chance." "You're delirious, Val." "Maybe, but I'm asking anyway." His eyes found hers. "When this is over, when I can stand up without falling over, will you let me stay, me and Lena, at your ranch? Not as hired help. As family." Her throat closed up. "You don't know what you're saying." "I know exactly what I'm saying. Been thinking about nothing else for 2 days. You, me, Lena. Making that ranch work. Building something good. Being something other than broken. We're both broken, Caleb. I know, maybe that's why it works." She wanted to say yes. Wanted to say it so badly her chest ached. But fear held her back. Fear of losing someone else. Fear of caring and having it ripped away. "Ask me again when you're not bleeding," she said finally. "Will your answer change?" "I don't know." He smiled just a little. "Fair enough, but I'm going to ask. So you better figure it out." Then he slept, still holding her hand. And Eliza sat there in a doctor's office in Helena, Montana, holding on to a man she'd known for 3 weeks and couldn't imagine letting go. Outside, the world kept turning. Marshals were hunting Drummond. Lawyers were building cases. Justice was grinding forward slow and inevitable. But in that small room, time stopped. Just for a moment. Just long enough for Eliza to realize that maybe, just maybe, surviving wasn't the same as living. And maybe it was time to learn the difference. They stayed in Helena for 5 days while Caleb healed and the marshals built their case. 5 days in a cramped boarding house that smelled like boiled cabbage and old leather, waiting for news that seemed to take forever coming. Pike had ridden back to the ranch the second day to get Lena. He'd returned with the girl clinging to his back, her face buried in his coat, not speaking to anyone until she saw her father sitting up in bed with color back in his face. Then she'd cried. Hard, ugly crying that shook her whole body. Caleb held her through it, whispering things Eliza couldn't hear, things meant only for a daughter who'd been terrified she was about to lose her last parent. Eliza had stepped outside to give them privacy, found Martha on the boarding house porch, smoking a cigarette she'd bummed off a passing cowhand. "You did good," Martha said without preamble. "We lost 2 men. We lost 2 men who knew what they were signing up for, and we won. That counts for something." "Does it?" "Johnson and Kent are still dead." Martha took a long drag, exhaled smoke into the cold air. "You know what my first husband used to say? He used to say that some fights are worth dying for, and the only tragedy is when good people die for nothing. Johnson and Kent didn't die for nothing. They died so Drummond couldn't keep hurting people. That matters. Did it matter to them? I asked Johnson before we rode out. Asked him if he was sure, if he understood the risk. You know what he said? He said he was tired of being afraid. Said he'd rather die standing than live on his knees. She stubbed out the cigarette. So, yeah, it mattered. Eliza didn't know what to say to that, didn't know if she agreed or if she was just too tired to argue. What about you? Martha asked. What are you going to do when this is over? Go home, fix what got broken, try to survive the winter. And the marshal? What about him? Don't play dumb. I've seen how you look at each other, like two people who've forgotten what it's like not to be alone. Eliza's jaw tightened. He asked if he and Lena could stay at the ranch. What did you say? I told him to ask again when he wasn't bleeding. Martha laughed, a sound like gravel in a can. That's the most romantic thing I've heard in 20 years. It's not romantic, it's practical. We both need help. We both need... She stopped, couldn't finish. Need someone, Martha finished for her. It's not a weakness, you know, needing people. Feels like one. That's because you've been doing everything alone for so long, you've forgotten how not to. But take it from someone who's buried 2 husbands and wished she had a third. Being alone is easy. Being with someone, building something together, that's the hard part. But it's also the part worth doing. She went inside, leaving Eliza on the porch with her thoughts and the cold. The break in the case came on the 4th day. Federal Marshal Thompson showed up at the boarding house with news that made Eliza's hands shake. We found Drummond, he said. They gathered in Caleb's room, him propped up in bed, still pale but getting stronger. Eliza standing by the window, Pike in the corner. Lena on a chair beside her father. Where? Caleb asked. Tried to run to California. Got as far as the Nevada border before local law stopped him. They're bringing him back now. When's the trial? 3 weeks. Judge is coming from Washington to oversee it personally. This got big, Rourke. Railroad money, federal fraud, multiple murders. They're making an example of him. Will it stick? Thompson smiled. It wasn't a friendly expression. With the evidence you brought us, he's going to prison for the rest of his life. His lawyers are already trying to negotiate a plea, but the prosecutor's not interested. This one's going to trial. Eliza felt something loosen in her chest. Not quite relief, but close. What about his men? She asked. 21 arrests. Most are cooperating, turning evidence against Drummond in exchange for lighter sentences. The ones who actually pulled triggers, who killed people, they'll see prison time. The rest will probably walk with time served and probation. That's not justice. It's the best we can do. But Drummond himself? He's not walking, that I can promise you. After Thompson left, the room was quiet. Lena broke the silence. Is it really over? She asked. Caleb pulled her close. The dangerous part is, the rest is just lawyers and judges. Can we go home? Soon as the doctor clears me to ride. Where's home? The question came out small, uncertain. Caleb looked at Eliza. She saw the question in his eyes, saw him waiting for an answer she wasn't sure she had. We'll figure it out, she said. Not yes, not no, but not a rejection either. The doctor cleared Caleb the next morning with strict instructions to take it easy, not lift anything heavy, and change his dressings daily. Caleb nodded through all of it, while clearly planning to ignore most of it. They packed up, settled their account at the boarding house, and prepared to ride out. Martha was staying in Helena to handle affairs for Johnson and Kent's families, to make sure they got the men's belongings and any compensation the territory offered. You come find me if you need anything, she told Eliza. I mean that. After what we went through, you're family now. Same to you. They embraced, brief, awkward, but real. Then Martha stepped back, nodded to Caleb. You take care of her, Marshal. I will. And Eliza, you take care of him right back. Man's too stubborn to know when he needs help. I noticed. The ride back to the ranch took 3 days. They moved slow, mindful of Caleb's injury. He tried to hide how much it hurt, but Eliza saw him wince when the horse moved wrong, saw sweat on his face despite the cold. On the second night, camped under stars that looked close enough to touch. Lena fell asleep between them, wrapped in every blanket they had. Pike took first watch, leaving Eliza and Caleb sitting by the fire. "You're not healing right," Eliza said quietly. "I'm fine. You're bleeding through the bandages again. It's just seepage. Doctor said that's normal." "Doctor said to take it easy. You're writing 12 hours a day." "Would you rather I stayed in Helena?" "I'd rather you didn't die of infection because you're too proud to admit you're hurt." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "I need to get home." "You keep saying that, but where is home, Caleb? You've been running for 2 years. Where are you actually running to?" "I don't know," he admitted. "Used to be Wyoming. Then it was anywhere that wasn't Wyoming. Then it was just the next town, the next job, the next place to sleep. But these past few weeks, working your ranch, sitting at your table, sleeping under a roof that didn't leak, that felt like home. First time in a long time something did." "You can't make a home out of someone else's ranch." "I know. That's why I asked if we could stay, not as visitors, not as help, as people who belong there." Eliza stared into the fire. "What if it doesn't work? What if we try and it falls apart?" "Then it falls apart. But at least we tried." "That's a terrible plan." "You got a better one?" She didn't. That was the problem. Every logical part of her brain said this was too fast, too risky, too likely to end in disaster. But the part that had spent 6 months alone, that had nearly died fighting for land that might have killed her anyway, that part was tired of being careful. "Ask me again," she said, "when we get back, when you're healed. Ask me the question you asked in Helena." "Will your answer be different?" "Maybe. Won't know until you ask." He smiled. That rare smile that made him look younger, less haunted. "Fair enough." They reached the ranch on the afternoon of the 3rd day. It looked smaller than Eliza remembered, more fragile. The burned barn was still just charred timber. The makeshift cattle shelter had partially collapsed in a windstorm. The house needed paint and repairs and 100 other things, but it was still standing, still hers. Lena slid off her horse, ran to the chicken coop. The birds were still alive somehow, still scratching at frozen ground, still laying the occasional egg. "They made it," Lena said, delighted. "I was so worried." "Chickens are tough," Pike said, "like the people around here." He helped them unload, then prepared to head back to his own ranch. His brother would be waiting, would have questions Pike probably didn't want to answer. "Thank you," Eliza told him, "for everything." "You'd have done the same." "Would I?" "Yeah, you would. You're that kind of person, whether you like it or not." He tipped his hat to Caleb. "Keep her out of trouble, Marshall." "I'll try. And if Drummond's lawyers try anything, you send word. I'll testify, whatever you need." "Appreciated." Pike rode off, leaving the 3 of them standing in the yard of a ranch that needed more work than 3 people could possibly do before winter set in hard. "Well," Caleb said, "where do we start?" They started with the essentials, getting the cows back into some kind of shelter, fixing the worst of the fence breaks, patching the roof leaks that had gotten worse while they were gone. It was hard work made harder by Caleb's injury, which he kept aggravating no matter how many times Eliza told him to rest. "You're going to tear those stitches," she said, watching him haul timber for a new cattle shelter. "They're holding fine." "They won't be if you keep this up." "Then I'll get new stitches. We need this shelter before the next snow." She wanted to argue, wanted to make him stop, but she needed the help too desperately to push too hard. Lena threw herself into ranch work with the enthusiasm of a kid who'd found purpose. She fed the chickens, hauled water, helped Eliza cook meals that stretched their dwindling supplies as far as they would go. She sang while she worked, made up songs about chickens and cows and Montana snow. It should have been exhausting, should have felt like drowning. Instead, it felt like breathing. A week after their return, Eliza was in town buying supplies they couldn't afford when she ran into Samuel Garrett, Pike's brother, the one who'd refused to help. He stopped her outside the general store. "Heard you made it back," he said. "News travels. Heard Drummond's going to prison." "That's the plan." Samuel shifted his weight, uncomfortable. "Look, I need to say something. I was wrong. About not helping. About being too scared to stand up. Pike told me what you did, what you risked. I should have been there." Eliza studied his face. saw genuine regret there, also saw a man who'd have to live with knowing he'd chosen fear over doing what was right. You should have, she agreed. But you weren't. Can't change that now. I know. But if you need anything going forward, help with the ranch, testimony at trial, anything, I'm offering. Why? Because Pike was right. I was a coward. And I'm tired of being ashamed of that. She thought about holding the grudge, thought about making him pay for his cowardice, but she was too tired for grudges, and she needed help too badly to turn it away. We're rebuilding the barn, she said. Could use extra hands. I'll bring my crew. Tomorrow? Tomorrow. He left looking like she'd given him absolution. Maybe she had. Maybe forgiveness was just another form of survival. That night, after Lena had gone to bed and the house was quiet, Caleb found Eliza on the porch. Same place they always seemed to end up, like the porch was where honest conversations happened. Samuel Garrett came by today, she said, offered to help rebuild. You accept? Yeah, we need it. Even after he refused you before? People change, or they try to. Seems wrong to punish them for that. She paused. Besides, I'm not in a position to turn down help just because my pride's hurt. Caleb leaned against the railing beside her. His side was healing better now that they were stationary. Color had come back to his face. He was starting to look like himself again, whoever that was. I've been thinking about what you said, he said, about asking you again. And I realized I've been asking the wrong question. What's the right question? Whether you want us here isn't really the question. You've already said you need help, and we need a place to stay. The real question is whether you're willing to try building something more than a business arrangement. Eliza's heart kicked in her chest. What do you mean? I mean, Lena needs a mother. He stopped, searching for words. I need to stop running. Need to put down roots. Need to be part of something that matters. And you need people who won't leave. Who'll stick around when things get hard. Who'll fight beside you instead of watching from a distance. That's a lot of needs. It is. But maybe that's okay. Maybe needing each other is the point. She looked at him. Really looked. Saw a man who'd lost his wife, lost his job, lost his way. Who'd found something like purpose in helping a stubborn widow keep her ranch. Who was offering to stay not out of obligation but out of want. What if I'm not ready? She asked. For what? For any of it. For being a mother to your daughter. For being whatever we'd need to be to each other. What if I'm too broken to build something new? Then we'll be broken together. And maybe that's enough. That's a terrible foundation for a relationship. Maybe. But it's honest. And after everything, I think honest is the best we can do. She wanted to say yes. Wanted to leap at the chance to not be alone anymore. But fear held her back. Fear of losing someone else. Fear of caring and having it ripped away. Fear of being happy only to have it destroyed. I need time, she said. How much time? I don't know. A week? A month? However long it takes to figure out if I can do this. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. You say that now, but what if you get restless? What if the road calls and you decide you'd rather be moving? Eliza, I've been moving for 2 years. You know what I learned? You can run all you want, but you can't outrun yourself. And I'm tired of running from what I want just because I'm afraid it'll hurt to lose it. What do you want? He looked at her with those steady marshal's eyes. I want to wake up in a place I chose to be instead of wherever I landed. I want Lena to have a home that's more than a barn or a wagon bed. I want to build something that lasts. And I want to do all of that with someone who understands what it's like to fight for every inch of ground. That's asking a lot. I know, but I'm asking anyway. She didn't answer. Couldn't. The words were there, but wouldn't come out. So she just stood beside him in the dark, listening to wind move through the skeleton of the barn, feeling the weight of everything they'd survived and everything they might build. The next day, Samuel Garrett showed up with 4 men and enough lumber to rebuild the barn properly. They worked from dawn to dusk, raising walls, setting beams, creating something that might actually stand against Montana winter. Caleb tried to help, but Eliza physically forced him to sit down. You're healing, she said. Let them work. I should be helping. You are helping by not dying of infection and leaving me alone with your kid. That got him to sit. He watched from the porch, Lena beside him, both of them commenting on the construction like supervisors. That beam's crooked, Lena would say. Little bit, Caleb would agree. Should we tell them? Probably fix itself when they set the roof. What if it doesn't? Then we'll have a slightly crooked barn. Character building. Eliza, working alongside Samuel's crew, heard them and almost smiled. Almost. The barn took 4 days to build. Not fancy, not perfect, but solid. Strong enough to house the cattle through winter. Strong enough to maybe last year's if they maintained it. On the 4th evening, when the last board was nailed and the last tool put away, Samuel approached Eliza. "We're square now?" he asked. "We're square." "Good, because I've been hearing things. About the railroad company. They're not happy about Drummond getting arrested. Might try to push forward anyway, find another local partner. Let them try. I'm not selling." "Figured you'd say that. But you should know you've got support now. What you did, standing up to Drummond, people noticed. You're not alone out here anymore." "Appreciate it." He left with his crew. Eliza stood looking at the new barn, at the house beyond it, at the land that had nearly killed her and might still. Caleb came up beside her. "Looks good," he said. "It does." "Ready to fill it with cattle come spring?" "If I can afford cattle come spring." "You will. We'll make it work." There was that "we" again, like it was already decided, like they were already a unit. "Caleb, I know. You need time. I'm not pushing, just stating facts. Whatever happens between us, I'm here for the winter. Promise to help you make it through. I keep my promises." Even when they're inconvenient?" "Especially then." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over land that had seen so much violence and might finally see some peace. Inside, Lena was making dinner. Eliza could smell something burning. The girl had enthusiasm, but not skill. Still, it was better than eating alone. "We should probably stop her before she burns down the kitchen," Caleb said. "Probably." But neither of them moved, just stood there together, not quite touching, not quite separate, in the space between what they were and what they might become. 3 weeks later, the trial started. Federal court in Helena, packed with spectators and journalists who'd traveled from as far as San Francisco to cover the case. Drummond sat at the defense table looking smaller than Eliza remembered, surrounded by expensive lawyers who tried to make poisoning wells and burning barns sound like misunderstandings. Eliza testified on the second day, told the jury about the visits, the threats, the barn fire, showed them the piece of expensive fabric Pike had found, soaked in kerosene, watched Drummond's face as she spoke, saw no remorse there, just anger at being caught. Caleb testified on the third day. Former territorial marshal, credible witness. He laid out the conspiracy, connected the dots, made it clear this wasn't just one rancher being aggressive. This was organized crime backed by railroad money. Martha testified. Pike testified. Even Samuel, looking ashamed but determined to make up for his earlier cowardice. The trial lasted 2 weeks. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced Drummond to 25 years in federal prison. His lawyers immediately filed appeals, but everyone knew they wouldn't stick. The evidence was too strong, the crimes too clear. Walking out of the courthouse, Eliza felt lighter than she had in months, maybe years. "It's really over," she said. "The legal part is," Caleb replied. "The rest is just living." "Just living," she repeated. "That sounds almost boring." "Boring sounds good right about now." They rode back to the ranch with Lena between them, the girl chattering about everything she'd seen in Helena, all the people and buildings and things she'd never experienced before. Can we come back sometime?" she asked, "when there's not a trial?" "Maybe," Eliza said, "if we can afford it." "Will we be able to afford it?" "Depends how good the spring calving goes." "What's calving?" "When the cows have babies." "Cows have babies?" Caleb laughed. Actually laughed. "We've got some education to do." "Apparently." They made it home 2 days before Christmas. Eliza hadn't celebrated Christmas since Thomas died. Hadn't seen the point. But Lena was excited, talked about how her mother used to make special cookies, how her father would tell stories. "We should do something," the girl said. "Something special. To celebrate being alive." Hard to argue with that logic. They didn't have much. No decorations, no presents, barely enough food for a special meal. But Eliza dug through her trunk and found fabric scraps she sewed into rough stockings. Caleb carved small wooden animals for Lena. They made a dinner from the last of their supplies that was probably the best meal they'd eaten all year. After dinner, they sat by the fire. Lena between them again, always between them like a small bridge connecting two separate shores. "Tell me about Mama," Lena said to her father. Caleb was quiet for a moment, then, "Your mother was the bravest person I ever knew. Not because she fought anyone, but because she never let the world make her cruel. She saw good in people even when they didn't deserve it, saw possibility where everyone else saw failure." "Like Miss Eliza seeing possibility in us?" He looked at Eliza over his daughter's head. "Yeah, like that. Do you think Mama would like Miss Eliza?" "I think they'd have gotten along fine." "Good, because I like her, a lot." Eliza's throat went tight. "I like you too, kid. Enough to let us stay forever?" There it was. The question laid bare by a child who didn't know about dancing around subjects. Eliza looked at Caleb, saw him waiting, not pushing, giving her space to decide. "Yeah," she said. "I think so." Lena grinned. "Really? Really? If your father's still interested in staying..." Caleb's expression shifted, something like hope mixed with relief. "I'm interested. Even knowing how hard it'll be, how much work the ranch needs, how little money we have. I've done hard before. We all have, but we haven't done it together. I think that might make the difference." "What if it doesn't?" "Then we'll have tried. That's more than most people get." Lena looked between them, reading something in their faces. "Are you going to get married?" "Lena," Caleb said. "What? I'm just asking." Eliza laughed. Couldn't help it. The absurdity of a child asking the question both adults had been avoiding. "I don't know, kid. We haven't gotten that far yet. But you might? Maybe, someday. If your father asks nicely." Lena turned to Caleb. "Papa, ask nicely." "Not how it works, sweetheart." "Why not?" "Because these things take time. Need to make sure we're doing it for the right reasons." "What are the right reasons?" Caleb thought about it. "When you can't imagine your life without someone. When you wake up, and they're the first thing you think about. When making them happy matters more than being right." "Do you feel that way about Miss Eliza?" He looked at Eliza, held her gaze. "I'm starting to." "Miss Eliza, do you feel that way about Papa?" It wasn't fair putting her on the spot like this. Wasn't fair that a child's direct question demanded an honest answer. But looking at Caleb, at the way he waited without expectation, at how he'd fought beside her and bled for her and stayed when leaving would have been easier, Eliza found she couldn't lie. "I'm starting to," she admitted. Lena beamed. "Then it's settled. You'll get married and we'll be a family and everything will be perfect." "Life doesn't work that way, kid," Eliza said gently. "It's never perfect." "But it can be good?" "Yeah, it can be good." "That's enough for me." Out of the mouths of children. Truth delivered without decoration or doubt. That night, after Lena had gone to bed, Eliza and Caleb ended up on the porch again. Their place. Where hard conversations happened under stars that didn't judge. "Sorry about Lena," Caleb said. "She's got no filter." "It's fine. Actually kind of helpful. Forces you to stop avoiding things." "Are we avoiding things?" "We've been avoiding things since Helena. Since before Helena, probably." "What do you want to do about that?" Eliza took a breath, let it out slow. "I want to try. Not marriage, not yet. But trying. Seeing if this works. If we can build something real." "What does trying look like?" "I don't know. Normal, I guess. We work the ranch together, raise Lena together, figure out how to be people instead of just survivors." "I can do that?" "Can you? Because I need to know you're not going to wake up one day and decide the road is calling. I can't have Lena get attached just to have you leave." "I'm not leaving. Already told you that." "People say a lot of things. Doesn't make them true." He turned to face her fully. "Eliza, I'm not Thomas. I'm not going to die and leave you alone. And I'm not my own ghosts. I'm done running from things that scare me. You scare me. This scares me." The possibility of building something good only to screw it up terrifies me. But I'm staying anyway. Because the alternative is spending the rest of my life wondering what might have been. You really mean that? Every word. She believed him. That was the surprising part. After months of trusting no one, of handling everything alone, she actually believed this man would stay. Okay, she said, then we try. Just like that? Just like that. But if you break my heart, I'm keeping the ranch and the kid. He smiled. Deal. They shook hands, formal, awkward. Then Caleb pulled her in and kissed her. It wasn't perfect. Their noses bumped. Her hands didn't know where to go. He tasted like coffee and exhaustion. But it was real. And after everything false and failed, real was enough. When they pulled apart, Eliza was shaking. That was terrible, Caleb finished. We'll get better with practice. You planning on practicing? If you'll let me. I'll think about it. But she was smiling, actually smiling, and for the first time since Thomas died, the future didn't look like something to survive. It looked like something to build. Winter hit hard 2 days after Christmas, the kind of cold that turned breath to ice and made the world feel like it might never thaw. Snow piled up against the new barn, drifted across the yard, buried the fences they'd spent weeks repairing. Inside the house, they learned how to live together. It wasn't smooth, wasn't easy. Caleb snored. Eliza woke at dawn and made noise doing it. Lena left her things everywhere and had to be reminded 3 times to do basic chores. They bumped into each other in the small kitchen, stepped on toes, got on nerves. But they were trying. That counted for something. You're burning the eggs, Caleb said one morning. I'm aware. Want me to take over? I've got it. The smoke says different. Eliza shot him a look that could have melted steel. He held up his hands in surrender, backed away from the stove. Lena, sitting at the table, giggled into her hands. What's so funny? Eliza demanded. You two. You argue like you've been married for years. We're not married, Eliza said. Yet, Lena added cheerfully. Don't start. But the kid had a point. They'd settled into patterns that felt domestic, felt permanent. Caleb handled the heavy work, still favoring his healing side but getting stronger every day. Eliza managed the money, such as it was, stretching every coin until it screamed. Lena took care of the chickens and helped with cooking and filled the house with noise that kept the ghosts at bay. It almost felt normal, almost felt like a family. The first real test came in February. The cattle got sick, all 3 of them, some respiratory thing that had them coughing and wheezing and looking half dead. The closest veterinarian was 2 days' ride, and they didn't have money for his services anyway. We could try treating them ourselves, Caleb suggested. With what? I don't know anything about sick cows. Neither do I, but we've got some veterinary techs in town at the general store. I could ride in, see what I can find. In this weather, you'll freeze before you make it 5 miles. Then what do you suggest? Eliza stared at the sick animals, feeling helpless in a way she hadn't since Thomas died. These 3 cows were all they had. If they died, there'd be no herd to rebuild in spring, no income, no way forward. I'll go, she said. You can't. I know this territory better than you. Nowhere to shelter if the weather turns. You stay here with Lena, keep the fires going, make sure the house doesn't freeze. Eliza, it's not safe. Nothing about this life is safe. But those cows die, we might as well pack up and leave now. I'm going. She saw him want to argue, saw him weigh the options and hate all of them. Finally, he nodded. Take the rifle. Extra ammunition. And if the weather turns bad, you hole up somewhere safe. Don't try to be a hero. Wasn't planning on it. She left at dawn, wrapped in every piece of warm clothing she owned, rifle across her back. The cold was brutal. Wind cut through fabric like it wasn't there, numbed her face until she couldn't feel it anymore. The ride to town took 6 hours instead of the usual 3. She stopped twice to warm her hands against the horse's neck, to make sure her fingers still worked. By the time she reached the general store, she was half frozen and wholly miserable. The store owner, a man named Jensen, who'd never been particularly friendly, took one look at her and brought her inside. You're going to lose fingers riding in this cold, he said. Need veterinary techs. Cows are sick. What kind of sick? She described the symptoms. He listened, then disappeared into the back. Came out with a book and a bottle of something dark. Respiratory infection, common this time of year. This book has treatments. This bottle is turpentine. You're going to need both. How much? He waved her off. Call it an investment. Heard what you did with Drummond. Figure the territory owes you one. Jensen, I can't. You can and you will. Now get yourself warm before you ride back. I'll make coffee. She sat by his stove for an hour, drinking coffee that tasted like burnt dirt but warmed her from the inside. Jensen told her about other ranchers who were struggling, about the hard winter affecting everyone, about how people were starting to work together more instead of just competing. You started something, he said. Standing up to Drummond. Showed people they don't have to roll over just because someone's got money and guns. I just didn't want to lose my ranch. Maybe. But you could have sold, could have run. You fought instead. That matters to people. She rode back as the sun was setting, pushing through cold that was somehow worse in the fading light. Made it home after full dark to find Caleb pacing the porch, rifle in hand. You're late, he said. Snow was deep. I was about to come looking for you. In the dark? That's stupid. So is riding alone in this weather? They glared at each other. Then Eliza started laughing. Couldn't help it. The absurdity of arguing about who was taking the bigger risk when they were both half frozen and stubborn as rocks. Caleb's expression cracked. He smiled, then laughed too. We're idiots, Eliza said. Complete idiots, he agreed. They treated the cows that night. Mixed the turpentine with molasses according to the book's instructions. Forced it down 3 unwilling throats. The cattle hated every second, but they swallowed. Now we wait, Caleb said. How long? Book says 3 days. Either they get better or they don't. 3 days of watching, worrying, checking on the animals every few hours. Lena helped, bringing them water, talking to them like they were people. You're going to be fine, she told the sickest one. You have to be. We need you. On the 3rd day, the coughing eased. By the 5th day, the cattle were eating again. By the 7th, they were back to their normal selves. Eliza stood in the barn watching them, feeling something like relief wash over her. We did it, she said. Caleb came up beside her. You did it. You rode through a blizzard and saved them. We saved them. All of us. Fair enough. We saved them. Lena appeared between them, worming her way into the space like she belonged there. Does this mean we can get more cows in spring? If we can afford it, Eliza said. We'll afford it, Caleb said with a confidence Eliza didn't quite share, but she appreciated it anyway. March brought the first thaw. Ice melted, rivers ran high, the world started to wake up from winter's grip. With the thaw came news. Pike rode over with a letter that had arrived at the general store. From the territorial office, he said, handing it to Eliza. She opened it, read quickly. Her hands started shaking halfway through. What is it? Caleb asked. Drummond's appeals were denied. He's being transferred to federal prison in Kansas. 25 years, no possibility of early release. That's good news, isn't it? It's great news. But there's more. The railroad company settled. They're paying restitution to everyone Drummond hurt, including us. How much? She showed him the figure. His eyes went wide. That's enough to buy cattle, a lot of cattle, and repair everything, and have money left over. I know. They stared at the letter like it might disappear if they looked away. Pike cleared his throat. So I guess you're not selling the ranch. Hell no, Eliza said. Good, because Samuel and I were talking. We want to buy some of your land, the eastern section near our property line. We'll pay fair price, help you fence it, and you'll have even more capital to work with. Why would you do that? Because having you as a neighbor is better than having some stranger who might sell to the next Drummond. And because it's good land. We can use it. Eliza looked at Caleb. He shrugged. Your call. She thought about it. The eastern section was good grazing land, but hard to access from the main ranch. Selling it would give her capital and strengthen ties with neighbors who'd proven they'd show up when it mattered. Let me think about it, she said. Fair enough. Offer stands whenever you're ready. After Pike left, Eliza sat at the kitchen table with the letter in front of her. Real money. Enough to not just survive, but actually build something. This changes everything, she said. Does it? Caleb asked. We can buy cattle, good breeding stock, maybe get some horses, actually make this place profitable instead of just barely hanging on. What about the land Pike wants to buy? I'm going to sell it. Money's good, and having the Garretts as solid neighbors is worth more than that grazing land. You sure? Yeah, it's the smart play. Lena, who'd been listening quietly, spoke up. Does this mean we can stay forever now? Eliza looked at this girl who'd become part of the fabric of the ranch, who'd worked as hard as any adult, who'd filled empty spaces Eliza hadn't known existed. Yeah, kid. It means we can stay forever. And you and Papa will get married? One thing at a time. But she said it soft, almost fond. The idea didn't terrify her anymore. Didn't feel like giving up independence. Felt more like gaining something she'd been missing. That night, after Lena was asleep, Eliza found Caleb in the barn checking on the cattle. He'd been doing that a lot lately, just spending time with the animals, making sure they were healthy. You ever think about what comes next? She asked. Frequently. Why? I've been thinking about this. She gestured vaguely at the barn, the ranch, everything. About us. About what we're building. And I think I'm ready. Ready for what? To stop calling this temporary, to stop waiting for the other shoe to drop, to actually commit to this thing we're doing. Caleb set down the brush he'd been using on one of the cows, turned to face her fully. What are you saying, Eliza? I'm saying Lena's right. We should get married, make this official. Build something real instead of just pretending we're not already building it. That's the worst proposal I've ever heard. You got a better one? He smiled. That rare, genuine smile that made him look 10 years younger. Actually, yeah. He dropped to one knee right there in the barn, hay and cow dung and all. Eliza Harrow, you're the stubbornest, most difficult woman I've ever met. You drive me crazy. You take risks that stop my heart. You've got the temper of a rattlesnake and the kindness of a saint, and I can't imagine spending my life with anyone else. Will you marry me? She stared at him kneeling in the barn, this man who'd showed up broken and had helped her fix pieces of herself she didn't know were shattered. That's still pretty terrible, she said. It's honest. True. She thought about making him sweat, making him wait, but she was tired of waiting, tired of being afraid. Yes, I'll marry you. He stood, pulled her in, kissed her. Better than the first time. Still not perfect, but getting there. When they pulled apart, Lena was standing in the barn doorway. I knew it, she crowed. I knew you'd say yes. How long have you been standing there? Caleb asked. Long enough. When's the wedding? We just got engaged 30 seconds ago. So? When's the wedding? Eliza laughed. Spring, after the calving, after we get the new cattle settled, after we're sure this isn't all going to fall apart. It's not going to fall apart, Lena said with absolute certainty. We're family now. Family doesn't fall apart. If only life were that simple. But looking at this girl's face, seeing the belief there, Eliza wanted to believe it too. They sold the eastern section to the Garretts in April, got a fair price and used it to buy breeding cattle from a rancher in Wyoming. 10 cows, 1 bull, all good stock. It felt like wealth after months of barely scraping by. The new cattle arrived in early May, right as the calves were being born from their existing 3. Lena watched the births with wonder, asking 1,000 questions about how it worked, why it mattered, what they do with the calves. We sell them eventually, Eliza explained, or keep the females for breeding. That's how we build the herd. But they're so cute, can't we keep all of them? Economics doesn't care about cute. That's sad. That's ranching. But watching Lena with the animals, seeing how gentle she was, how naturally she took to the work, Eliza felt something shift. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about building something to pass on, creating a legacy. Thomas would have liked that. Would have liked seeing his ranch not just survive, but thrive. Would have liked Caleb and Lena, would have appreciated the fight Eliza had put up to keep what they'd built. The wedding happened in June. Nothing fancy, just Martha and the Garretts, a few other neighbors who'd helped along the way, and a traveling preacher who happened to be passing through. They stood in the yard of the ranch in front of the new barn and made promises about staying together through whatever came next. Lena stood beside them holding wildflowers she'd picked that morning. She cried through the whole ceremony, happy tears that she didn't bother wiping away. You're stuck with me now, Eliza told Caleb after the preacher pronounced them married. Lucky me. You say that now. I'll still say it in 20 years. You better. They kissed while everyone cheered. It was simple and imperfect and exactly what they needed. The reception was potluck in the yard. Martha brought bread that could have doubled as a weapon. Pike brought actual edible food. Samuel brought whiskey that probably wasn't legal, but no one cared. They ate and drank and told stories until the sun went down and the stars came out. Later, after everyone had gone home and Lena was asleep, Eliza and Caleb sat on their porch. Married now. Actually married. You nervous? She asked. Terrified. Good. Me too. What are we nervous about? Screwing this up, letting each other down, the usual fears. We'll probably screw some things up. Definitely will. But we'll figure it out. Will we? He took her hand. We've survived Drummond, survived winter, survived sick cattle and barn fires and federal trials. I think we can survive being married. That's optimistic. I'm a changed man. You're still the same stubborn bastard who showed up last fall asking for work. True, but now I'm your stubborn bastard. She laughed, leaned against him, felt his arm come around her shoulders, felt the solid warmth of him. What do you think happens now? She asked. Now we work. Build the herd. Make this ranch profitable. Raise Lena. Argue about stupid things. Make up. Repeat. Sounds boring. Sounds perfect. She thought he might be right. After months of violence and fear and barely surviving, boring sounded like paradise. Summer brought work. Hard work. Sun-up to sundown work. The kind that left you too tired to think. They expanded the pastures, fixed fences, built a proper chicken coop that didn't fall apart every time the wind blew. The herd grew. The calves thrived. Money started coming in. Not a lot, but steady. Other ranchers started coming to Caleb for advice. His reputation as a former marshal who'd helped take down Drummond made him someone people trusted. He helped settle disputes, gave guidance on land management, became a kind of unofficial community leader. You're good at this, Eliza told him one evening after he'd spent 3 hours helping a neighbor work out a water rights issue. At what? Being the person people come to. The one who fixes things. Just using skills I already had. No, you're building something. Community. Trust. Things that matter more than cattle or land. He thought about that. Anna used to say the same thing, that I was good at bringing people together when I wasn't busy chasing bad guys. She was right. She usually was. It didn't hurt anymore when he talked about Anna. Eliza had worried it would, had worried she'd be jealous of a ghost, but instead she felt grateful that Caleb had loved deeply before, that he knew how to love and was choosing to love again. In August, Lena turned 9. They threw her a party with the neighbor kids, cake that Eliza only slightly burned, and presents they'd saved for weeks to afford. Lena got a new dress, a book about horses, and a small knife for ranch work that made her feel grown up and important. Best birthday ever, she declared that night. Better than before? Caleb asked gently. Different than before, but still good. Mama would have liked it here. Would have liked Miss Eliza. She stopped. Eliza. You can call me whatever you want, Eliza said. What should I call you? What do you want to call me? Lena thought about it seriously. Can I call you Ma? I know you're not my real mama, but you kind of are now, if that's okay. Eliza's eyes burned. She blinked hard. Yeah, that's okay. That's more than okay. Really? Really? Lena threw her arms around Eliza's waist, hugged tight. Thanks, Ma. Caleb watched them, his expression complicated with emotion he didn't try to hide. Later that night, he told Eliza, Anna would have loved you, would have been glad Lena has you. You can't know that. I do know it, because she wanted Lena to have a mother who was strong and kind and didn't quit. You're all those things. I quit all the time. Every day I think about giving up. But you don't. That's the difference. September brought the first hints of fall, leaves turning, air getting crisp, the knowledge that another winter was coming. But this time they were ready. The barn was solid, the house was repaired, they had cattle and money and a community that would help if things got bad. They were going to make it. One evening, Eliza was going through the books, calculating profits and expenses, when she realized something that made her stop breathing. They were in the black, actually profitable. For the first time since Thomas died, the ranch was making more money than it cost to run. She showed the figures to Caleb. He checked her math, checked again, then started laughing. "What?" she demanded. "We did it. We actually did it." "Did what?" "Saved the ranch. Made it work. Built something that's going to last." She looked at the numbers, at the proof that they weren't just surviving anymore. They were succeeding. "Thomas would be proud," she said quietly. "He would. But more importantly, are you proud?" She thought about it. About the woman who'd stood in this kitchen 10 months ago, alone and terrified, watching her world burn. About everything she'd survived, everything she'd fought for, everyone she'd become. "Yeah," she said, "I'm proud." That night they celebrated. Nothing fancy, just the three of them, dinner and cake, and Lena playing music on a harmonica Pike had given her. It was loud and off-key and perfect. Later, after Lena had gone to bed, Eliza and Caleb ended up on the porch. Always the porch. Their place for honest conversations under stars that had seen everything and judged nothing. "You ever regret it?" Eliza asked. "Giving up the Marshall life, settling down here?" "Never. You?" "Never regret taking you in?" "Yeah." She thought about lying, but they'd gotten past lies months ago. "Sometimes," she admitted, "not because I wish you weren't here, but because it's scary, caring about people, knowing you could lose them." "You could. That's the risk." "How do you live with it?" "By deciding the good parts are worth the scary parts, by choosing to be happy instead of safe." "That's very philosophical for a man who used to shoot people for a living." "Former living, and sometimes philosophy is all we've got." She leaned against him, felt his arm come around her automatically, like they'd been doing this for years instead of months. "I love you," she said, first time saying it out loud. Scary and liberating. "I love you too," he said back. "Even though you're stubborn and impossible and burn everything you cook." "I don't burn everything. You burned water last week. That was one time." They argued and laughed and kissed and forgot what they were arguing about, just existed together in the space they'd carved out of violence and fear. Winter came again. Harsh as always, but manageable now. They weathered storms and cold snaps and days when getting out of bed felt impossible. But they had each other, had Lena, had a home that was more than walls and roof. In February, Martha came to visit. She looked older, tired in a way that went beyond physical exhaustion. "What's wrong?" Eliza asked. "I'm selling the ranch, moving to town, getting too old for this life." "Martha, no, you love that land." "I did, but I'm 73 years old and my bones hurt and I'm tired of fighting winter. Time to let someone younger take over." "Who's buying it?" "Actually, I was hoping you were." Eliza blinked. "What?" "My land borders yours on the west. Combined, you'd have one of the biggest ranches in the territory, and I'd feel better knowing it was going to people who'll take care of it." "Martha, we can't afford—" "I'm not asking full price. I'm asking what's fair, and I'm giving you first right of refusal before I put it on the market." Eliza looked at Caleb. He looked back. "We'd need to see the books," he said. "Make sure we can afford to expand." "Take your time. I'm not going anywhere until spring." They spent 3 weeks going over numbers, walking Martha's land, discussing possibilities. It was a risk. Expanding meant more work, more responsibility, more ways to fail. But it also meant security, growth, building something even bigger than they'd imagined. They made the offer in March. Martha accepted. By April, they owned twice as much land as before. "We're going to need help," Eliza said, looking at the expanded territory. "Agreed. Can't run this with just the three of us." "What about Pike? His younger brother's looking for work." "Samuel's kid?" "Yeah. He's 18, strong, knows ranching, could use the opportunity." They hired him, then hired 2 more hands. Suddenly the ranch that had been Eliza alone was a full operation with employees and schedules and real infrastructure. It was terrifying. It was exhilarating. It was proof that they'd not only survived, but thrived. Lena turned 10 that summer. She was taller, leaner, more confident. She worked alongside the hired hands, held her own, earned their respect. She still had nightmares sometimes, still cried for her mother on bad days. But mostly she was happy. Mostly she was just a kid growing up on a ranch. You did good, Caleb told Eliza one night, raising her, being what she needed. We did good, both of us. She's going to be amazing when she grows up. She's already amazing. Fair point. That fall, they sold their first major cattle shipment, 20 head to a buyer in Wyoming. The profit was more than they'd made in the previous year combined. We're actually doing this, Eliza said, looking at the check. We are. Thomas would be so confused. He struggled for years and we're turning a profit in less than 2. You had help this time. That's the difference. Is it? Yeah. Doing things alone is hard. Doing them together is still hard. But at least you're not carrying everything yourself. She thought about the woman she'd been when Caleb first arrived. Alone, desperate, barely hanging on. Thought about who she was now, still stubborn, still difficult, but no longer alone. Thank you, she said. For what? For staying, for fighting, for being stupid enough to think we could make this work. We did make it work, against all odds. The best things usually are. 2 years after the wedding, Eliza stood on the porch of her ranch watching the sun rise over land she'd fought to keep. The barn was solid. The herd was healthy. The house was full of people she loved. Caleb came up beside her, coffee in hand. He didn't say anything, just stood there with her, watching the world wake up. Lena appeared between them, worming her way into the space like always. She was 12 now, almost as tall as Eliza, with her mother's eyes and her father's stubborn chin. What are we doing today? She asked. Same thing we do every day, Eliza said. Work. Boring. You love it. True. They stood together. 3 people who'd found each other against all odds, who'd built something real out of desperation and determination. The ranch spread out before them. Not perfect. Never perfect. But theirs. Earned through blood and sweat and refusing to give up, even when giving up would have been easier. Other ranchers had started asking for advice. How to modernize. How to work together instead of competing. How to survive when everything seemed determined to break you. Eliza and Caleb helped when they could, shared what they'd learned, built networks and relationships that made the whole community stronger. We started something, Caleb said one day after helping a neighboring ranch avoid foreclosure. What's that? A movement, maybe. People looking out for each other, refusing to let the bastards win. That's very poetic for a former marshal. I'm a changed man. You keep saying that. Doesn't make it less true. By the 3rd year, they'd become the people others came to for help. Not because they were perfect, but because they'd survived and were willing to share how. More families moved into the area. Good people, hard workers, folks who wanted to build something lasting. The territory was growing, changing, becoming more than just empty land and isolated ranches. Eliza watched it happen with something like wonder. They'd not only saved their ranch, they'd helped build a community. One evening, sitting on the porch with Caleb while Lena practiced rope tricks in the yard, Eliza said, I've been thinking. Dangerous. We should expand the house, add a couple of rooms, maybe build a proper guest quarters. Why? Because people keep showing up needing help. Might as well have space for them. You want to turn the ranch into a refuge? Kind of, yeah. People helped us when we needed it. Seems right to pass that forward. He thought about it. Anna used to talk about doing something like that, opening our home to people who needed a hand up. Think she'd approve? I think she'd love it. They built the addition that fall, 2 extra bedrooms, a larger kitchen, space for people to stay while they got back on their feet. It cost money they didn't quite have, but somehow it worked out. It always seemed to work out now. The first people they helped were a young couple whose ranch had burned down. They stayed for 3 months, helped with work in exchange for room and board, saved enough to buy new land and start over. Then came a widow with 2 kids. Then a man who'd lost everything to drought. Then a family running from violence back east. The ranch became more than just a ranch. It became a place where broken people could heal, where those who'd lost everything could find a new start. You know what Thomas used to say? Eliza told Caleb one night after they'd taken in their 5th family. He used to say that land didn't matter if you didn't have people to share it with. I never really understood what he meant, but I think I do now. What do you think he meant? That home isn't a place. It's the people, the community. the choice to build something together instead of alone. That's pretty wise for a dead guy. He had his moments. They laughed, easy laughter, the kind that came from years of working together, fighting together, building together. Lena was 15 when she told them she wanted to be a marshal like her father used to be. Why? Caleb asked, trying to keep the worry out of his voice. Because people need protecting. Because you taught me that standing up to bad people matters. Because I want to help. It's dangerous work. So is ranching. Ma almost died 3 times last year. That was different. How? Those were accidents. Being a marshal is choosing danger. That's worse. They argued for an hour. Finally, Eliza stepped in. Let her try, she said. Let her see what it's actually like. She might hate it. Or she might love it and get herself killed. Or she might be amazing at it and make the world better. You don't know until she tries. Caleb looked at his daughter, at the determination in her eyes, and saw Anna looking back at him. Fine, he said. But you finish school first, and you train properly. No taking stupid risks. I promise. She kept that promise. Finished her education, trained with federal marshals, became the first woman in the territory to earn a badge. Caleb was terrified and proud in equal measure. She's going to change things, Eliza told him. You know that, right? I know. Doesn't make it less scary. Nothing worth doing is safe. You sound like Martha. Martha was wise. Martha had died the previous winter, peaceful in her sleep. She'd left her money to Eliza and Caleb with instructions to use it to help others. They'd set up a fund for ranchers in trouble, for families who needed a hand up, for people fighting to keep what was theirs. The territory kept growing. More people, more ranches, more community. And through it all, Eliza and Caleb's ranch remained a constant, a place where people could come for help, for advice, for shelter from whatever storm they were weathering. They aged. Gray hair, aching joints, the kind of tired that sleep didn't fix, but they kept working, kept building, kept opening their home to those who needed it. 20 years after Caleb first showed up asking for work, Eliza stood on the porch of a ranch that bore almost no resemblance to the failing operation she'd been trying to save alone. The barn was massive. The herd was one of the largest in the territory. The house had been expanded 3 times and could sleep 20 people comfortably. Caleb came up beside her, moving slower now, but still solid, still steady. You tired? He asked. Always. Want to stop? Never. Good, because I think there's a family coming up the road. Wagon looks like it's seen better days. Eliza looked, saw the wagon, saw a man and woman and 3 kids who looked like they'd been traveling hard. Guess we better put on coffee, she said. Guess so. They walked inside together, still arguing after all these years, still working, still building. Lena visited when she could, bringing stories of criminals caught and justice served. She'd become everything Caleb hoped and feared, tough, fair, uncompromising, a force for good in a world that needed it. You did good, Eliza told Caleb one night after Lena had left for her next assignment. We did good, both of us. She's going to be fine. I know, doesn't stop me worrying. Being a parent means worrying. You taught me that. Did I teach you anything useful? You taught me that being alone is easier, but being together is better. That home is people, not places. That fighting for what matters is worth the cost. That's a lot of wisdom to pack into 20 years. We're efficient. They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that came from decades of knowing someone, of building a life together piece by piece. The ranch continued. The community grew. People kept showing up broken and leaving whole. The legacy Thomas started and Eliza fought to keep became something neither of them could have imagined. Not perfect, never perfect, but real, lasting, good. And in the end, that was enough. The sun set over Montana land that had seen violence and rebirth, over a ranch that had been saved by stubbornness and community, and the refusal to give up even when giving up seemed inevitable. Inside the house, strangers became guests. Guests became family. The cycle continued. Eliza and Caleb, gray-haired and weathered, stood on their porch one last time before heading in to welcome the new arrivals. No regrets? Caleb asked. Only one. What's that? That it took me so long to say yes when you asked to stay. You said yes eventually. That's what counts. True. They went inside together, leaving the porch empty but for the wind and the stars and the ghosts of everyone who'd found refuge there. The story that started with fire and desperation ended with community and hope. Not because everything was fixed, but because broken people had chosen to build something beautiful anyway. And sometimes that was the greatest victory of all.